Hey everyone, this is Brooke and Tyler from the future here with a special message before we get into a very exciting conversation with Brandon and Monika Finn of Paladin Creative, the creators of the Worldhopper Ball at Dragonsteel Nexus 2024.
Yeah, we spoke with Brandon and Monika over a couple of recording sessions, and a lot changed in the real world in between those sessions. When we spoke to them the second time, they had just recently returned to their home after being evacuated during the multiple wildfires raging in the LA area, and the threat of another evacuation was hanging over their heads. So if you listen all the way to the end of this episode, Brandon and Monika spoke a bit about their experience and the different ways that we can all help recovery efforts for so many communities that have been devastated by these fires. If you're not in the mental brain space to listen to that conversation, totally understand. Either way, if you would like to help, we will have links in the show notes.
Yes, so please check out those links in the show notes, and remember that much like how things are in the Cosmere, sadness and beauty do exist side by side, and we think you're really going to love this conversation with Paladin Creative, learning all of the behind-the-scenes secrets of the Worldhopper Ball. So thank you all for being listeners.
And without further ado, here's the show. Hello, World Singers. My name is Brooke.
And I'm Tyler.
And this is
Cosmere Conversations. Hello, everyone. We have an amazing episode today. I am enthusiastic. I am
excited.
Exuberant. Yes, I'm excited. I'm all the possible E words and a couple of non-E words as well, because we have the opportunity today to speak with the heads of Paladin Creative, who were the company behind creating the Worldhopper Ball. We've talked a little bit about it in our last episode. We are still in the thrall of the Worldhopper Ball.
Always and forever.
Exactly. It's never going to go away. And so this chance to speak with the creators and to kind of bring them into a deeper conversation about what they created is just really exciting for us. Brooke, do you want to introduce Paladin Creative, and then we can just kind of dive right into it?
We have with us today the Chief Executive Officer and Creative Director of Paladin Creative, Brandon Finn, as well as the Chief Operations Officer, Monika Finn. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. We are long-time listeners, first-time callers. Very, very honestly, truly.
Yeah, our
Thank you for having us.
I guess we can start with how we know each other.
Yeah, I think that's great, because the story of us is really unique, I guess, or the more I talk to you.
It's exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's totally unique, yeah.
Let's just kind of go over that, and then we'll discuss the Worldhopper Ball in more detail, because our relationship begins about 4, or I guess now 5 years ago at this point, when Brandon, you became a patron and one of our early patrons as well in 2020. And for a while, I'd say a year, we had a very normal patron and creator relationship. You know, I was saying, thanks for supporting us. And, you know, occasionally quizzes would go out or little questions and you would answer them or not. And it was just kind of a very normal relationship. But then in September of 2021, Brooke and I got married, technically for the second time, but we got married and we said, hey, patrons, we're taking a break. We're not going to be around. We're going on our honeymoon, which is when you told me that you two were also getting married in September of 2021.
Yeah, that's right. We did it, guys.
Yeah.
Woo!
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
We're all married now.
Yeah, exactly. We all made it happen in September.
And at our wedding, we had some custom wine bottle labels that had the Cosmere symbol and some like Cosmere references that were just a fun thing to add to our wedding. We had a couple left over, and so we sent one to you all just to also celebrate your wedding happening around the same time. Fast forward to 2024, we get an email from this guy, this creative director of Paladin Creative, asking us to talk about this fun new event happening at Dragonsteel Nexus. And when Tyler told me we got that email, I was totally imagining just some random guy in an office. And I'm like, all right, whatever. This guy is probably reaching out to, all the Cosmere creators and like trying to infiltrate our fandom so they can put on this event.
Yeah, we got on a list somehow. And we didn't.
All right. What? Like, we'll talk to him, but whatever.
And then I had to explain that not only has Brandon been a patron for a really long time, he was also the patron that we sent the wine bottle getting married in September to like dual celebrate how awesome we are for choosing that time to get married. But it was just this perfect meeting moment or like re-meeting moment where our lives had just kind of softly intertwined, and then they started to intertwine a bunch more. So I want to explain for everyone kind of what happened for our Worldhopper Ball experience to kind of set the stage, and then we'll give the floor over to you so you can kind of give us full context. You reached out and we had this conversation maybe like 5 months before the Worldhopper Ball, and then Brooke and I did everything completely normally at the Worldhopper Ball experience. We paid full price for our tickets. We stood in line. We went to the Thursday night event, and then we had a conversation on the podcast in our Dragonsteel Nexus episode about what we experienced there. We met Dalinar and Navani. Everything was lovely. We had a fantastic time. And afterwards, I sent you a text and I was just like, Brandon, you crushed it. This was amazing. Thank you so much. And then on Saturday, you invited both of us to the final performance or the final session on Saturday night. And we did that for free. And we did not wait in line.
That was kind of our press pass.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how I kind of, exactly. That was more of like media pass. And, there were, as you guys know, there were some issues on the first night. Opening night, everything that can go wrong on opening night will go wrong. But after that, you identify all the issues and you flesh them out pretty quickly. And then I just wanted you to see it in its absolute fullest, potential. So, and I'm really glad you guys were able to come to Saturday.
I was just going to say too, that with the first night having the problems that it did, I think that there's still something very special about the very first session because it's unknown and it's the very first one. So that, you saw people coming in with all this anticipation and wonderment of what are they even walking into. And then after that, you could tell that, people were telling their friends about what to expect and all that stuff. So I think you, Brooke and Tyler, really got like the best experience of all, where you had, where you got to go on the first night and experience what we were even introducing to the world or to the fans of the Cosmere, as well as, the culmination of all of this, like where really the full energy was brought at the end of this is the last time we get to do this. And,
I completely agree. There's something still really, really special about the first night, the first Worldhopper Ball ever. Something really special about getting to see everything before anyone else and like kind of have that knowledge for the next couple days of the con. So yeah, like you said, I think we totally got the best of both worlds. If we could do it again, I would do exactly the same thing and go the first night and then the last night.
But I hope that sets the stage as we're going to be talking about some of the behind the scenes aspects of the Worldhopper Ball, and that kind of introduces us how we know you, Brandon and Monika. And what I have now realized is that we didn't ask our introductory question of both of you. And so I want to know, what is your favorite character in the Cosmere? Or is there an order of Knight Radiant that you are most associated with? And Monika, would you start us off just with that before we dive into the Worldhopper Ball?
Of course. I think it's hard to pick just one character that's your favorite. So just going down the list for different reasons, Wit has the best dialogue, the best comebacks, one-liners, Jasnah is just an incredible powerhouse of a woman that I think a lot of women aspire to be. Intelligent, opinionated, confident. Dalinar and Shallan, inspire self-forgiveness in yourself, that you are more than just your mistakes, and that you can, take the next step towards being a better person. I think a lot of people really need that. And Kaladin and Adolin are just wonderful boys, love their bromance, and I love the fact that they represent non-toxic masculinity in the Cosmere while still being incredibly strong and a force for positive change.
I agree. I think that you've listed most of the
everyone.
Characters in the Cosmere, so that's good.
And it's a pretty good book. Yeah.
I did. I mean, that's why I said different reasons. Also, shout out to Risen.
Shout out to Risen on the pod. Friend of the pod.
Friend of the pod, indeed. Yeah.
I love Risen so much. I love Dawn Shard, and I hope we get to see more of her. I hope she gets her own series, and she's wonderful. I love what she represents.
What about an order of the Night Radiant that you kind of most associate with?
I have taken the quiz a few times, and my top results, top two, I would say, are Willshaper and Lightweaver. And Lightweaver, I think, makes a lot of sense for me because I'm a graphic designer by trade. So I thought that was really apt and pretty accurate in a lot of ways.
Yeah, nice. What about you, Brandon?
The Stormlight Archive is my heart and soul, for sure. My favorite characters in the Cosmere will come from that. It always comes down to Dalinar, Kaladin, and Adolin. Really tough to pick between the three of them. I guess if I had to choose one, I would have Adolin win out by just a hair. He's just the best.
He's the best.
He is the best boy, and I love him dearly. And I think all three of them are incredible versions of what it means to be a man. Like as my wife said, non-toxic masculinity. They just represent these different facets of what we could be. You know what I mean?
You're also the most like Adolin, I would say.
Thank
That's
you.
your personality.
I'll take that. Thank you.
She's like, you're the best one.
I'll take it. And then for my order, I have also taken the test many, many times. The quiz. And I always oscillate between Windrunner, Edge Dancer, and Bondsmith, which correlates well with the three characters I just named. I would say I most identify with Windrunner. My wife tells me I'm a Bondsmith, but I feel like that's something you can't name yourself Bondsmith. That's crazy.
Well, according to Brandon Sanderson, you can pick whatever order you want. The quiz is just a starting place, so.
Brandon Finn, my husband right here, did take the Worldhopper Ball, the concept of the Worldhopper Ball, and took Roshar that we all love and see in our own heads, that lives in our imaginations, from the cognitive realm, and brought it here into our world. If that's not creating a perpendicularity, then I don't know what is, and you are a bondsmith through and through.
Thanks, Sonny.
Yeah, I think that a bondsmith is a great call for someone who has done so much manifesting of the imagined into the real. And that was part of the magic of the Worldhopper Ball, is that you brought something that was in our mind, was in Brandon Sanderson's mind originally, and you kind of collectively created this experience. And that's a little bit about what I want to talk about today, because I felt your enthusiasm, felt your passion, and felt your intensity, your love of these stories just from the interactions that we had previously. And then when you made that all happen in Utah at Dragonsteel Nexus and kind of invented or created this world for us to experience, it was such a alignment of all three realms, such an alignment of our past and our story, and then the collective group, the community group. It was transcendent. So even if you might imagine yourself as like a little edge dancer or a wind runner, I think Bondsmith is a fine title for you at this point in time, Brandon.
I will accept this burden.
Vindication for my
no, thank you guys so much. You're both so awesome, such wonderful people. I'm truly touched that the Worldhopper Ball moved you guys in the way it did, and that was our goal, the definition of a passion project, you could say. And we poured everything into it, our heart, our souls, sweat, tears, blood to make this as wonderful and transformative as possible.
Transformative is such a great word. I think that everyone that I've seen talking about the ball has had that experience, this incredible collective experience that was just so beautiful.
What is humanity without art?
Yeah.
And you two have made something kind of in the physical realm that gave us a chance to experience something together. And I want to talk about that whole process, but for our listeners, I want you to know that the Worldhopper Ball itself cannot be considered fully spoiler free. So we are going to classify this episode as at risk of spoilers for Wind and Truth. And then what I'm going to promise is that when we start talking about spoilers, I'm going to give lots of warning. Tyler from the future is going to drop back in and give an exact timestamp so that you can listen to portions of this episode. And I imagine it's going to go on for a while. You're going to be able to listen to portions of this episode that are completely spoiler free. And then there are going to be conversations about what happened at the ball itself. And that will, of course, include some aspects of spoilers for Wind and Truth, because this is supposed to be a canon event. This is a moment that happened in the world that we love so much. And this Worldhopper Ball is not just for the fans. It is for the fans, but it's also part of the story and part of the greater Cosmere. And I'm very excited for you to tell us about that. So what I would love for you to do, Brandon, is to kind of take us through the entire experience from where does it begin? How do you get in contact with Dragonsteel? What is the impetus or the catalyst for this Worldhopper Ball? And then just kind of move us forward through time up until the actual event, and then we'll kind of transition and just talk about those 5 different sessions that actually happened. So where is the beginning? Where does it start? How does this idea come about, and how do you get connected to Dragonsteel?
Yes, man, this is a big question and a long story, and it all started when I first picked up the Wave Kings in 2013.
A decade ago.
Yeah, exactly. This really started in end of 2022, early 2023. And even just to go further back than that, I was initially very inspired by Brandon and what he had done with Dragonsteel when I started my own company. Dragonsteel and the convention event that they just, decided to do was a huge inspiration for me to also make the decision to say, I can do this on my own as well as anyone, just like Brandon did, just kind of take the leap and put your best foot forward and have confidence in yourself. So he already inspired me just to do that. And it was my goal to work with Dragonsteel when I started my company, my goal to work with Dragonsteel within 5 years. So that's kind of where we started.
Yeah, foundation.
Do you want to say something, Monika?
Yeah, to give background on Brandon Finn's credentials a bit, he didn't just start this company out of nowhere. Brandon's been in the business of event production for over 15 years now and working for different agencies around LA. And after the pandemic is when Paladin Creative started up as its own company in earnest. And one of the catalyst moments that I saw for the Worldhopper Ball, how we even got in touch with Dragonsteel in the first place, was that Brandon Finn had started this company, Paladin Creative, and you have clients that you look for. And we knew, for example, that the Dungeons and Dragons movie was coming out around the time when this all started for us. And when we saw when the movie was premiering, it was premiering a lot sooner than we thought it would. And we knew by that time, whatever events company was going to produce the premiere event for this would have already bid out on it and would be working on it already. And so the regret that my husband felt during this time was not one of this lamenting regret of, oh no, it's passed me by, it's gone now, what am I even doing this for? No, it was rather this kind of regret that is a fueling kind of regret of I will never let an opportunity like this pass me by again. I am an experienced event producer. There is no reason why I can't put on these events, as well as specifically events for fandoms, events for nerds, because I've always known him to be, not just in the Cosmere. So that's what spurred him into action. And he was like, I'm going to reach out to Dragonsteel cold, and hopefully, as Brandon was saying, down the line, in a few years from now, we'll get to work on a project together. So I'll let you take it over.
Okay, so
honey.
you guys are huge into D&D. Brandon, is that you?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that Monika and Brandon?
It's both of us. I mean, I'm a dungeon master.
Tell me more, sir.
My world is called Naira. The campaign's called The Crystals of Naira.
Ooh.
And we have a theme song.
Yes. Oh my
I
gosh.
actually meant to send that to you guys so you could hear it. It's very cool. We start every session off with it. I have plenty of painted miniatures. I make terrain and do all that fun stuff. Monika and me have been playing D&D since, I want to say, 2016 or so. Huge into it. Figurines all over the house. Dragons on the bookcase. It's great.
Okay, so the
Perfect.
movie coming out is obviously going to strike a chord in the fandom, but you also have the ability as a professional and one who just started a company. You're like looking for opportunities and you're like, oh, that was an opportunity for me. And
Exactly.
it passed you by. And tell me more about like then the next step.
The most important one. So after I realized that had passed me by, and yeah, it was very frustrating because you're like, okay, well, some Hollywood whatever is gonna now produce the opening and the premiere event for Dungeons and Dragons, and there's no way they play D&D. There's no way they have any idea what the lore is or anything like that. And kind of knowing that you had a shot and you didn't seize it, that'll get your butt in gear, kind of, if you so choose to let it. And like I said before, when I started my company, my goal was within 5 years to be working with Dragonsteel and be talking to Brandon Sanderson, in some capacity. And after that passed me by, that was the kick in the pants of like, why wait? We're here to do something amazing. We want to do something amazing and work with incredible people and build worlds for fans to live in. Why are we going to wait on that? Let's do it now. Let's just see what happens now. Who knows what tomorrow holds?
And from a practical perspective, what does that mean? Because I know what you sent to Dragonsteel. You've shared that with me. But tell the people a little bit more about that, like May 2023 promo package that you send over to Dragonsteel.
So I started working on something in the beginning of 2023. I do think it was January. Some really good advice I got once from Mentor was, if there's something you really want professionally, you need to show your value up front. And the way that I kind of thought, instead of, you sending an email, reaching out, whatever, and just saying, hi, my name is blah, 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 and I think I'd be a good fit, just be like, I made this for you.
Yeah, show, don't tell, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Show, don't tell. So the idea was to make a creative pitch deck for the Stormlight Archive season 4 premiere for the TV show, quote unquote. This is all fictional, of course, mind you. And that was kind of the concept that we wanted to show, not tell, of basically saying, we know how to adapt your property into a live event. This is how we think it could work. We set it fictionally at the Shrine Auditorium here in LA because the architecture is kind of Middle Eastern inspired, which lends itself immediately to the Alethi design.
And I've seen this. You have sent me the slide deck that you eventually are going to share with Dragonsteel. It's incredible. The amount of work, maybe we'll be able to send out some pictures if that's okay with you, but the amount of work that went into the creation of this is astounding. And this is all, as you said, the promo material, the kind of taking your best shot or taking the biggest swing that you possibly can.
Yeah, like a very elaborate business card of like, here's who I am and what I do.
Yes.
And so you send this to Dragonsteel, and what happened? Like, do you send that in the mail? Do you send it as a zip file? What's the situation there?
So yes, once we felt it was ready in May, we worked on it for about 6 months. Really, like as you said, put a lot into it. We had professional renderings done and stuff. Again, show, don't tell. Take your shot. If you're going to take your shot, do it with enough power and energy and confidence that no matter what, you did everything you could. No matter what happens, no matter the outcome, put everything you have into it. So then no regrets. So first thing we did is we sent a physical package. We had the deck bound. We included 16 business cards because of 16. What else did we put in there? A USB stick. We had like digital versions of everything. And then I had this letter to Brandon that I addressed to him directly.
You had a wax seal.
Seal that we had. Yeah. Yep. And the whole thing.
Cute.
And we were like, or I should not say we. I was like, it's so much more romantic this way. We send it in the mail and they'll get it. And I was like, oh, the Brandon will connect with that even more. Wow, how cool is that? So we sent that in May and didn't hear anything at all. And that was real scary. Ugh. And we kind of just feel like, they probably haven't seen it yet. I don't know. Yeah, well, maybe we'll hear something. And in August, we were with a friend of ours who is in the music industry and manages artists, manages Jacob Collier, one of our clients as well. And I told him about this because he's a big Sanderson fan as well. And he said, "Are you crazy? You said in the mail? You need to email them. No. And he told me, Jacob will get mail that we check every 3 months, maybe even longer. It's like they probably never even saw it. You need to reach out to them a different way. Don't just send a package and give up." And we sent an email right after that. Luckily, I had a store contact. I had bought some Bridge 4 socks or something. And so the store email was in my drafts or whatever. And so I sent them the email with everything and the deck and the letter and all that stuff. And then we heard back the next day.
Hey!
It was really cool.
Yep. Look at that. 21st century technology.
Yeah, it's a real thing, guys. Don't, even if you think it's romantic and all that, just digital exists for a reason. Yeah.
And it's not just that you were able to find that contact. It's that you also had the material to back it up and you had put in the work to back it up. Okay, so you said that was around August.
Yes.
They reach out in some way and are just like, "We've got your package. It's cool. Let's talk some more."
Yeah. They basically said, "This is really, really cool. Thank you for sending it. It's clear you put a lot of work into this. There's nothing we have of this sort right now. No TV shows, no movies, anything like that. But maybe down the road one day we can work together." And I was like, "That's really cool. Great. And thank you very much. And it's nice that they got back to me. Great." And during our communication, we were offered Dragonsteel. It wasn't Nexus yet, but Dragonsteel Convention 2023, Kellen, who ended up being pretty much my counterpoint on the Dragonsteel team, on the events team. Kellen offered us 2023 badges, and we said, "Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to come out." And Monika and I were like, when we go out there in November, we will just hopefully put faces to names, shake some hands, plant the first seed that down the road in a few years, maybe something will work out. This is just the next step in the process. All good. Cool. So a few more months pass by. November rolls around right before Thanksgiving. That's when the 2023 event was. And luckily, my wife, who's very intelligent, or sometimes I'm lacking, reminded me, "Hey, why don't you reach out to Kellen again? Reach out to the Dragonsteel team. Let them know you're coming. Let's keep interest going." And I said, "Okay."
Well, yeah, that was the thing, is that there was like this hesitancy because, of course, the relationship is on our side is just so delicate. You don't want to mess anything up. And I was like, "Brand, have you reached out?" He's like, "No, I don't want to bombard them. They're dealing with the convention." He knows, again, he's in the business. He knows how much work this requires. And I was like, let's just reach out and see what they say. Just to remind them, we reached out to them and they said, "Actually, we do have something to discuss with you now."
Literally, I wish I had the email pulled up, but it said "That's so funny that you reached out," because I've had a Post-it note on my desk that says, "Email Brandon Finn," for the last 2 weeks.
It was really exciting to get that email because, like Brandon said, all we were expecting was hopefully we run into them and hopefully we can just say hi.
Keep building that relationship so that it would kind of eventually bear fruit. But then it sounds like they already knew at that point that they wanted to do something.
Yes. Yeah. And that was crazy. Me and Monika freaked out, screenshotted that email, sent it to my friends, "Oh my God, you guys, the dream's coming true. Oh, it's amazing." This was every step of the way was "I can't believe they reached back out to us. Oh my God, they want to talk about something now. This is amazing. These are our dreams coming to life to be able to do this."
The meeting was, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and even being at that convention, again, not a Stormlight year. And yet it was so jam-packed full of people. And to even just see the fans in real life, obviously, about them on the internet. You as a podcast have them as patrons. But to see people in real life, I just remember that feeling of like, yes, we would really love to, like, we really want to be a part of this and create something special for these fans that came out in droves even right before Thanksgiving break. So that was really, really exciting to have an actual meeting and sit down and chat with the team.
And did they pitch the ball to you at that meeting?
Yes, and no. So this is so at the meeting, 8:30 a.m. Tuesday. I'll never forget.
Ouch.
And again, we had bought plane tickets and we were in and out in 24 hours. So we were like, we're just gonna say hi and leave. And now we have this meeting. We're like, oh my God, this is incredible. So 8:30 a.m. at the Radisson. So good. I sat down with Kellen, Daniel, Katie, all from the Dragonsteel team. I think Kara Stewart was there too. And they approached me with an idea that they had. They wanted to do a fantasy ball, which is, at the time it just kind of started taking off, like on Book Talk and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But that was pretty much all that they had figured out. They wanted to do a fantasy ball, and they want to work, it's something really hard for them to take on. They already have a convention. This is a whole nother giant event in its own. They saw what I put together and they were like, we think that you might be good for this. And in this meeting, we came up with the name, the Worldhopper Ball, which was supposed to kind of be a placeholder until we found something else, but it ended up just sticking. And the difficulty that they had initially was, how do we make this ball that needs to change every year, but also needs to remain the same, so that the branding, so that we can advertise it and, all that stuff. We want it to be recognizable. And that is where the name, the Worldhopper Ball, came from. So that way we could integrate people from any world coming in. And that was the very, very first little bit of that. So after that meeting, when we came up with the name, the Worldhopper Ball, we were asked to come up with a concept specifically for Stormlight Archive, what would be the first Worldhopper Ball, and pitch it back again in January. So we had about 6 weeks, I want to say.
Yeah. So you have this now like real opportunity for what you had previously done as a fictional pitch. Now the real pitch is on. So you have 6-7 weeks to work on this pitch for a Stormlight event or a Stormlight version of the Worldhopper Ball. What does that pitch in January look like for you?
Well, before that, I want to just get my enthusiasm out about the moment we realized what it was going to be. The original concept for like, what was this ball set in the Stormlight Archive world going to be, kind of struck like a thunderbolt. One day at the desk in the office, it was boom, this is going to be Adolin and Shallan's wedding, because that's one of the only stories that we were never given. There's basically a 1-year gap between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War we don't know about really, and what happened at Adolin and Shallan's wedding. We were not shown that moment.
Yeah, and I remember starting Rhythm of War and just feeling so cheated that we didn't get to see their wedding.
And it comes from a place of like, I wish it was there, because we all love Adolin and Shallan, to your point, Brooke. Like, yeah. Who do we want to see get married? But like, I want to see that wedding. Adolin's fashion sense, are you kidding me? Like, come on. What a moment to not get. And
also such a happy moment in otherwise like such a deeply moving and often tragic story. It's like, here's a moment of levity. Like, how did the Alethi party?
Right.
You know how they fight.
Yeah.
How did they party?
Yeah, we don't need this
ball. How do they celebrate?
We don't need this ball to be full of trauma and tragedy. Yeah. It needs to be fun and full of joy and love and laughter. Once we kind of realized that's what it needed to be, it took a life of its own. And we started talking about the actual concept of doing the Worldhopper Ball in general as what we called an experiential novella. Brandon always talks about that there's too many stories for him to write. He can't get around to writing everything, even though he has all these ideas. And so this is supposed to be another medium for him to tell his stories. It's an experiential novella, literally something that you get to live, that's written by Brandon, or at least the concept is given to us by Brandon, that we then put you in the middle of through dancing and fun and laughter.
I think this is probably the most significant aspect of the Worldhopper Ball that you wouldn't only get as a viewer, or someone who was attending the ball. What you did here with this experiential novella concept is take a moment from the world. It's different than just throwing a party. You're like telling this story that, as you said, was never written by Brandon and is now being experienced by us as the audience, but also being experienced by everyone who is there, because you create this little world, this scene for everybody to play in, and you're going to have actors and performers, but you're going to have food staff, and you're going to be bringing in so many different aspects that are all meant to create a living novella, a place for the people to experience something that we usually only get to experience in our mind. We usually only get to experience through the written word, and we create that in a kind of symbiotic relationship with the author. Now you are adding a piece as well.
Yeah, like so cool that it's not just an exciting event to experience, but that it's also advancing the story and like deepening the world and what we know about it. I think that is a really unique aspect of this event that I don't know if any of the other fantasy balls have that aspect. It seems to me like this is something unique that you brought to this kind of genre of event, Brandon.
Thank you very much for saying that. I will say we did look up the words experiential novella many times, and nothing comes up but our event. The other balls that we've seen, even the Bridgerton ball, is not considered canon. You know,
right.
It's an experience, and it's very cool, but this is supposed to be something different. You know, Dragonsteel Nexus, their tagline is be part of the story. And we took that maybe too seriously.
No, I think
Never.
I think you take it the right amount of seriousness. And so you have this idea, the concept of Adolin and Shallan's wedding, and then you're coming to the pitch meeting. Is there anything fun to tell about that, kind of like the background of that pitch meeting in January?
Yeah, I mean, Brandon came so fully prepared for this meeting. It was so cool to be able to fly out in person. We happened to be in town during that time anyways, and we came and flew out, and Brandon just did his pitch. It was wonderful, amazing. We got to see the Dragonsteel offices, meet everybody in person, shake hands, just as we had, you know, a couple of months prior. And
this was also the first time they were seeing our idea. And when we did say, like, we had invitations printed, professional invitations printed, and we had a moment where we clicked the next slide and handed the envelope, you know, over and said, you are cordially invited to attend the wedding of Brandon Shallan Davar and Bright Lord Adolin Kholin. And they, you know, everyone was like, oh my God. They freaked out. It was so cool. Me and Monika were like, oh, yes.
I actually remember, speaking of, this sparked a memory. I remember sitting at the table and Brandon's going through the slides and he's doing his pitch professionally in the sense of like, you know, like building anticipation. And he's like, okay, and so what kind of stories have we seen in the Stormlight Archive that we've never gotten to see? Like, I forget who the person was. I apologize, but I remember we were sitting in the meeting and somebody was like, oh, wait, I think I know where this is heading. And then Brandon pulls up the slide that's like, and we cordially invite you, takes out the beautiful invitation that we had professionally made. And yeah, and there's this eruption of like, oh my God, I knew it. And wow. And it's just to have that response, even that jubilant excitement already gave us so much confidence that we were heading in the right direction, that this is the kind of thing that they were looking for. And I even said during the pitch meeting towards the end, I was like, you know, you need a fan to do this event for you. Like, maybe you have other agencies bidding out on this, but I was like, you need a true fan to bid out on this event to do this for you, because there is just so many details and there's so much enrichment and there's so much heart in this that you just cannot replicate. And what Brandon and I have seen in real life is like, sometimes, you know, nerds, geeks, whatever, we fall into that community as well. This is not a dig in any way, will put on their own events and they don't necessarily have the event experience. And so while they're full of heart, maybe they're not super professional looking. And then on the flip side, you have these professional companies, these boutique agencies that put on these elaborate events, and maybe they look really sparkly and professional, but they lack the heart. And so what I was saying in the meeting was that Brandon is the combination of both of those things, is that he has the expertise, the over 15 years of experience, as well as is such a deep, deep fan of these books. This isn't something that he just read in preparation for this pitch. Like, he's been a long time fan and knows this world so intimately and deeply, and only he can pull it off. And only a true fan would know what kind of event to put on that wasn't in the books.
Yeah, exactly. I think that aspect of the event was so clear to us. I think we talked about that in our last episode about Nexus, just the fact that from the very bottom up, the creation of the event was truly by fans for the fans. And that like beating heart of the event gave it all of the magic. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so they're excited with this pitch. It's accepted. You know, you guys are kind of now...
The words were accepted.
You found those right words. You convinced them. And there has to be then what I imagine is just a big, gigantic ticking clock that is started going backwards down to the event first week of December. You know that it's going to happen at that time. What are kind of like the next few months of production or pre-production? I don't know what you would classify it as, but like take me from January maybe to like when you reached out to us in the summer of 2024.
For sure. I mean, honestly, even just before leaving the Dragonsteel offices, one more quick little aside.
This is Tyler from the future here to tell you that if you want absolutely no spoilers for Wind and Truth, you should skip forward 2 minutes right now. Okay, are they gone? For everybody else, here's that quick little aside from Brandon.
So we did get to meet Brandon that day, the Dragonsteel
Brandon Sanderson.
I did not meet myself. Well, I like
I found myself that day.
Exactly. I mean, I actually did kind of feel like I found myself. There's this quote that Winston Churchill says, felt as though I were walking with destiny, that all my past life was but a trial for this moment and this challenge. And I very much felt that way, that like I'm in events for this moment. I love scenic design for this moment. I'm a huge fan of fantasy for this moment. Brandon's writing the series right now for this moment. Like it did kind of feel that way. Regardless, we got to meet Brandon Sanderson. His team invited us to stay for lunch, which was really cool, really nice of them. And they were really excited to tell him about the concept and tell him about the theme. And when they did, and they we were all sitting down and they said, Kellen said, and you know what we're going to do, Brandon? We're going to do the wedding of Adolin Kholin that no one got to see. And Brandon Sanderson, mic drops, goes, oh, I wrote that.
That's in book 5.
That's in book 5. And at the time, no, they didn't know.
His staff didn't even know.
His whole team freaked out and we're like, what? You didn't tell? What?
And like, meanwhile, Brandon and I are sitting there being like, we didn't sign an NDA. Who's to stop us?
Like, we did
later.
Of course.
But that was a really cool thing to know, that Brandon himself had already, again, one more little like, this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That he had already written the scene. And that was it was such a cool coincidence. And the scene was called Characters from a Play, which is chapter 97 in Wind and Truth. It's the Oathgate archway that we used as guests enter. And that was pretty much the only resource that we had to pull from. Like none of this exists in real life. Like there's no movie, there's no show, there's nothing to pull from. This is all text that we're highlighting.
You said that you signed an NDA. You're going to get the actual chapter, Characters from a Play, that Brandon wrote to serve as like inspiration as well as a source for what you're going to make. But you have to actually make it. This is the thing that's hardest for me to understand with no experience or background in creating events or doing any of this type of stuff. Like, what does it take and what does it require when you're 9 months, 10 months out from an event of this size? I mean, you had 600 people ish per night. 650 per session, and you had 5 sessions. So thousands of people are going to be filtering in. Eventually, there's going to be, tickets being sold for this extra event. So walk me through January 2024 to maybe when you reach out to us in the summer, and those just kind of like few months of production or pre-production. Tell me what's going on for you.
Absolutely. When we started that pre-production phase, I usually work in 3 phases of pre-production, which is like ideation, then production, which is design, and then post-production, which is like execution, kind of. Those don't exactly line up, but that's usually how we go. Design, production, execution. So when we first started, we have to go further back even than you're thinking. Like, what is the Worldhopper Ball? What does that look like? What is the font? Like, there's no brand for the Worldhopper Ball. So we started with, we need to make the Worldhopper Ball brand, which is, if anyone has designed logos and stuff like that in the past, it's not a simple task that you just willy-nilly throw around, especially when, and I quote from someone from the Dragonsteel team said, I think it was Katie, said, be careful what you make, because people are going to get this tattooed on themselves.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you have that beautiful, I don't know if it's considered the logo.
It's the logo mark, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you design that?
We designed everything for the Worldhopper Ball branding.
My gosh.
The logo mark in particular came from an in-person meeting with Sean and Isaac from the creative team at Dragonsteel. It was one of our site visits. That was one of the pieces we were missing. This is after we had already made the clock. So we knew we had this clock incorporated, and we had all these other assets with the Cosmere, cosmos, nature, and the sky and the constellations. And during this meeting, Sean like sketched out a moon and with a star. And then I was like, can you put hands in there? And so it was like this little cumulative collaborative moment in the Dragonsteel office meeting room. And that's where that logo mark came from. And it was like the final little piece. And then when we got home, we made everything else into digital design.
I want to know how you go from those kind of like ideas or those sketches to the real like practical things that you're building, and kind of like what's the timeline like for you over those next couple of months?
Once we get the Worldhopper Ball brand nailed, we figure out it's going to be the clock. And so we knew we had to make the clock, first of all. More importantly, we started with basic questions like, where's the venue? We originally wanted this to be off-site. There's something more magical in our experience about like, you have your convention, cool, it's all at the convention center. But then this big immersive thing, that's not at the convention center. Like, it's in a separate location. You disassociate yourself from all that convention stuff that's been going on throughout the day, and you have a lot more control over it. So we had to stay within the convention center because of logistical things. Really, we couldn't fit all of those people. More than anything, that plus the venue was already paid for on just a dollars and cents level. This is Dragonsteel taking a big risk, trusting us on what we've kind of promised them we could do. Like, there's no way to prove that you can do this. Like, you show past work, you talk about the concept, and basically they have to trust you to do it. So this was a huge gamble on their part. And when we realized we could save quite a bit of money, plus couldn't find anything that would fit everyone, we stayed within the convention center. And then that helps inform, like, what are we going to build? Like, to your question, Tyler, like, okay, now we know our confines. We have a 7'9" ceiling, and the escalators, only one escalator goes up and only one escalator goes down. So we have to think about choke points when people are coming in. And this was a problem on the first night. Initially, we wanted both escalators to go up at the same time so we could bring in more people and not get a bottleneck. We would bring the archway all the way back right against the doors that enter the conference room. And that way you get 2 lanes of traffic. You wouldn't have a buildup, but we couldn't do that. The other escalator would not, it can't physically go up. It only goes down. So we had to go up one way. And then we realized, there's this huge sign in the way that's immovable. It says like convention room 355. And that hung down another 3.5 feet. Okay, we have to push the entry moment forward more. So that's where the archway is going to go now. And so like, once you have the venue and you understand the space, then you can start thinking about, okay, well, what are people experiencing? One of the very first things from the beginning we wanted to make sure we included was the Oathgate entry tunnel that would lead into Shadesmar. We always talk about how important an entry moment is for guests to feel transported into a new world. Like, you can't just go into this thing. You can't just open the door.
Yeah.
We got lucky that we were up all these escalators because you're going to Urithiru. It's very tall.
Yeah.
You're already anticipatory going up, up, up. And
it felt separate enough to me from like the convention vibe. And I think it was like kind of convenient that it was still in the same location, since so many of us have hotels that are close by. But for all of this, do you have a team of set makers and, prop makers and all of that within Paladin? Are you contracting people specifically in Salt Lake? Or are you contracting people in LA and then like moving everything to Salt Lake? It seems so hard to me to be doing something like this remotely.
Right. Absolutely. So we do have our team. That is really the first place to start, is who's working on the project. I mean, it all starts with an incredible team. And so in-house, we have myself, we have Monika, we have Abby, our incredible graphic designer. Then we have Sarah Seligson, who's our executive producer, Alex Locke, who handled all the food and beverage, including designing the menus, Lisa McAllister, who handled all of the decor elements. And then we hired people locally on site. Stephanie Panos was our runner and our PA, who just did a phenomenal job making sure everything is exactly where it needed to go. But the biggest challenge we have was, what does Roshar look like in a physical world?
Yeah.
When you have to rent things, essentially. Like we are not a TV.
Fabricate them too.
Yeah.
We're
not a TV show. We do not have a $5 million budget. Like we have to rely on what exists already for the most part. And there are pieces that we fabricated, like the columns, and we put the strata lines in, such minute detail. And then I have to communicate that to the fabricators that we subcontract. And then there's all the other teams involved, all of whom I communicate the vision to. They then bid out to me and my company, and then we choose who we're going to work with. And we had lighting teams, we had audio team, we had our fabrication team, and then we had our scenic and set team, and then we had all those props, everything that you guys saw that was hanging, all the food displaying, all the furniture, anything like that. We rented from 8 different rental houses and they were all in Los Angeles, except for one. For the most part, there's just so much more accessibility to prop houses and cool, fun little things that are already pre-existing. Like the Moroccan chandeliers, we could not find those in Salt Lake. We had to ship those out on a semi-truck from LA.
The stress I got to site later than Brandon did. Brandon flew out earlier than I did. But I remember just texting Brandon constantly and being like, is the semi-truck on the way? Is it going? Because it's like, if that doesn't get there, then that's it.
Yeah.
You know?
You have 2 days, 3 days to load the event, to load in the event and keep track of everything. Because we had 8 different houses we rented from, plus, 5, 6 different subcontracted teams that are all on site, plus all of the stuff that we got, like the goblets with the spheres. We ordered over 100 pounds of marbles. So like that should give some good perspective of the amount of stuff everywhere.
Right.
And
because you have to fill the whole space.
You have to fill the whole space and try to account for like, okay, well, how many marbles do I need? Who can answer that question?
To Brandon's point about the effort that this took of, again, there is no source material beyond the books that you can, at least visual source material, really, that's out there to draw from. This isn't like you're taking from a TV show and you're like, oh, that iconic couch, it's going to have to look like this. It's like, well, what does it look like?
It's words on a page. Yeah.
And because it's not of Earth too, but because a lot of the Alethi culture is inspired by different cultures on Earth. And, how do you make all of that work together as a cohesive vision? There was a lot of conversations there too that Brandon can speak to about color palettes and, what kinds of rugs do we get and what kinds of tents do we get for the food and beverage station?
Do they even have tents? Why do they have tents?
Right.
Like, what's the story? Goncho Catering Cousins, they come in. Well, the Herdazians are often described as like, I mean, right now in the books, they would have already been refugees. Right. And they're setting up what they can, but also setting up for royalty. So it's okay, it needs to be kind of royal looking, but it still needs to have that merchant marketplace vibe just for the food and beverage. This is just for the food and beverage station. And there's so many of those little tiny details that you need to always have in your mind and spec out and then turn into real life and figure out, can you afford it? Do we have to go a different direction? And in events, things do tend to just work out, no matter how dark it looks. You've got a ticking clock when you get the job, and that clock will expire at 5:30 p.m. on Thursday, December 5th.
Yeah.
That is when the clock ends. You can't reshoot. We can't push another day. That is when the clock ends. And when things start to go wrong, oftentimes at the end, when you look back, you're like, I'm so glad that adjustment was made.
Yeah.
Because it made us go a different way, and that was a better decision anyways.
and you owe it to the guests
Yes.
for them to have an amazing experience.
There was a phrase that often popped into my head, and I said this out loud to people. I'd rather die than have this event go poorly. And I meant it. Like, over my dead body, this will happen. And I mean that. Yeah. When someone, there were such specific situations where it was like, oh my goodness, this seems like oh no, this is really bad. This won't work out. And I would be like, I will die first before I let this fail. And people would get a little like, oh man. Geez,
exactly.
really,
this is the windrunner side of you coming out.
Yeah.
Monica is sitting here like, excuse me.
You can't die. I'm married to you.
If you die, I'll kill you.
Yeah, exactly. I will bring you back to life so I can kill you.
Exactly.
I think
and
that
going
this is
back,
a great example, though, of just how much passion you are bringing to this event and kind of the planning for this. There's so many different moving pieces. You've already, listed a dozen people or prop houses that are coming together to create this event. And we're something like 6 months out. And from Brooke's background in theater, I at least have some knowledge that 6 months out from event, you're probably starting to look at the actors and the other individuals that are going to be involved in this production. So before we kind of jump into those character actors or those performers that you're going to bring on, are there any other aspects of this production stage that you think is really important to mention?
Well, the production side, once you're on site producing this event, we were in this, big conference room for the entire day. You're there for like 16 hours. You're walking 20,000 steps a day. The skin on your fingers and your lips is getting chapped and bleeding because of the dry air. You're not eating very well, and you're getting probably 4 hours of sleep. But I just wanted to say that on paper, it sounds like we should have all been absolutely miserable. And yet we're putting this on, and everybody has the biggest smiles on their faces. And everyone is so excited to be there. And it's like, yeah, just hand me a Red Bull. It's fine. I don't care. And because we're in this room this whole time, everyone's just running around in their socks because it's the whole floor is carpeted. And so we're just running around, getting on these ladders, building this, creating that, taping this down, helping each other out. I mean, the camaraderie there, with the opening night, if you wanted to speak to that really quick, every single planning piece has been leading up to this exact moment. And to hear Brandon get on the walkie
and say, we are officially opening doors. Everyone, welcome to the first annual Worldhopper Ball. Yay! Thank you for everything, and then thank you, everyone. I love you guys, and couldn't have done this without you. And then everyone chimes in saying, go team, go, you're the best. And it's such a beautiful unifying moment when those doors open for the first time and you get to see the look on people's faces on something that you've just spent an entire year of your life pouring every ounce of your time and energy and your emotion, everything you had, you put into this. And then you get to watch people interact with it and see it and touch it and say things like, I got to go to Roshar tonight. And there's nothing better.
I see that as the kind of connection point between all of your pre-production, everything that you're talking about with these different vendors and the materials. They're starting to come together. Your mind is putting together what this party looks like, this reception for Adolin and Shallan look like. But eventually you got to start hiring the Adolin and Shallan to actually perform, and the other performers that are going to take place at this event. There's real actors. This is immersive theater. So there are professional actors that are, supposed to be interacting with the guest at times and then saying lines. I have no idea how that works. That seems like a theater troupe needs to come in and start practicing, but you are a live event company. So I don't imagine that you have actors in your back pocket that are just ready to go. So can you tell me a bit more about the casting process, if that's what we're going to call it, for these actors and these performers. And then I think that will take us nicely to the actual event and like the week of, the day of, and we'll be able to jump in there in a little bit more detail.
The actors you guys had were all great. From my understanding, most, if not all of them, were fans. And I'm just so curious how you found all of them, how that process worked. How did you put together such an incredible cast, especially from remotely? Like, you're not there. I don't know if any of them are local to Utah, but like, how did that all come together?
Yeah, no, that was a tricky one. And it's something that we were very lucky in. Originally, just to kind of put it simply, we weren't supposed to be handling the casting. We were going to be working with a third party. And at that point, we had about 6 months. It's usually what you want to get the right, make sure you land the right person. It was about 6 months of lead time. Kind of outside of our control and outside of Dragonsteel's control. Things didn't work out with that third party. And by the time they didn't work out, we had about a little less than 3 months to get everything in order and start the entire casting process. And, my company isn't a casting agency.
Yeah.
We do work with casting agencies, but I don't have one internally. So we said, of course, we will take this on. We want to make sure this is done right. And just like things tend to work out in the Cosmere, the right characters ended up in the right places when the time was right. And a lot of people fell out of the sky. It's something I say often. Our casting manager, who we ended up hiring, our show manager, Sarah Reidinger, happened to reach out and say, hey, I don't know if you're looking for back of house staff or running the production, but I have experience and I own a small theater group in
Idaho.
And I'd love to help. And we reached out to her and she came on board. And then she had a show director. She came on board. And once we set up the casting, we realized we needed to do this pretty quickly. And a lot of people had already reached out. Savannah, who is Shallan, she had already reached out just to say, hey, I'm going to shoot my shot. This is my audition. We didn't ask her for one, but she submitted one and it was phenomenal. Jackson Dickert also reached out and said, I think I'd be a great wit. And that's how that worked out. Jackson Miller, I saw him on an Instagram reel and I was like, oh, he looks just like our good boy Adolin. And that's how that worked out. And
so perfect.
And Cliff also reached out saying, it's been my dream to play Kaladin for so long. And everyone was a fan. All these, and that's what we realized, is that these actors all needed to be fans. The characters simply would not have been done right. And they would not have been done in the way we needed them, given the time constraints especially. So at the end of the day, we're glad the challenges arose so that we could have the right people cast.
Also, I wanted to say a shout out to Wex, who played Jasnah, and Kathy, who played Navani. Both of them were also obviously wonderful and amazing. And to
Coulson, who played Dalinar.
And the whole cast was just so phenomenal. In a way, it's like, when things don't work out, it's one of those things where when one door closes, a window opens. Like, it was just so wonderful to be able to actually extend this out to fans and have them come on in and play the characters, because that ended up being such an integral part of the event too, was that, in between scenes, fans could come up, guests could come up and take pictures with them, ask them questions. And it was all in world, because the actors knew this material so intimately, they could answer in character, all these guest questions, which was just this added little splash of color to the whole event. And
it's sealed. It was the glue that held it. It held the light weaving,
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. I think that element definitely elevated the event, especially when you're going to have performers interacting directly with audience members, putting them in that position. I think even as a performer, that can feel precarious.
Yeah. Putting together the casting briefs.
Yeah, especially if you don't know necessarily like the material as well. And so the fact that they were fans and were able to really embody that in those kind of off-script moments, I think really was beneficial for the event as a whole.
Yeah. And as we talked about in terms of that world building or that catharsis that we felt as viewers, as participants or audience members, I think that was so essential because it was those little moments on the side, the taking a picture with Dalinar, the being insulted by Wit as you walk through, like those little moments form a connection. They might only take seconds. They might not be a great example of articulation and like, oh, I'm conveying everything that I possibly feel about Dalinar while I'm standing next to Dalinar. No, I just take a picture. But then to me later, that's what I'm looking back on, and it makes everything sync together. So we're going to talk more about the actors and kind of the performances. When we're in this space, we're talking 3 months out and everything is starting to come together. You had reached out to Brooke and I, and we're just kind of asking questions regarding the feel or the environment and the look of Roshar. So could you talk a little bit about that? The actual like physical materials. You mentioned the props earlier, how a lot of those came from the prop houses, but I'm also thinking about like the columns and the fabrics and all of those aspects. How does that come to be in Utah on that day?
So
Trucks.
semi-trucks. Next question. First of all, just so you guys know, we only reached out to 2 people. Well, 3 people if I count you 2 as separate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm I'm pretty confident in my own mind and how I'm interpreting everything.
Yeah.
But when I thought of like, you're always looking for someone to bounce something off of. And I did not have that really at all, except my wife, of course, obviously. And when I thought of who knows this, who understands Roshar and the world better than anyone I know, and I thought of Cosmere Conversations. And if there's anyone I trust and respect more with how to interpret the words of Brandon Sanderson, it was you guys. And that's why we reached out to you. And besides you, we reached out to Marie Seeberger, who graciously adapted the creative that we had put together. I think this was in September. So the creative was relatively locked. You know, at that point, we had done our 3 phases of a design, production, execution. So what Marie made was this concept art that basically was like, if the wedding was real and it was really happening in real life, what would it look like? Nothing to do with the event, just what would it look like?
Yeah.
And so a lot of this concept art imagery that she put together ended up, informing a lot of our decisions, just like the conversation we had.
Oh my gosh, I feel so honored, and then I also feel so honored to be in a category with Marie Seeberger.
Exactly. Just you put us at the same level as Marie. That does not make sense in my brain. But I think we'll take all the praise off mic and just continually bring us back to what does that mean? And
let me give just a little bit of context, because I know when we spoke over Zoom, we had talked a lot about the textures and materials. And I just I want to say this more so just the audience has an understanding of the kinds of thought processes and details that went into the event, because all of these things were truly considered in a really deep way. I know you have a whole copy of the Stormlight Archive that is just annotated with scenery details and looking at how much of the world is made out of wood and how much of it is stone and how much glass do we think there is? Where are they getting glass on Roshar? Does this material exist? Those are a lot of the bulk of the conversation that we had, and I just think it's important to highlight all of those really in-depth thought processes for the audience.
Absolutely. And something we discussed internally, we were heading this direction, and you guys gave me the last little push that I needed to make sure and lock it in, was everything that people are going to interact with, furniture, the drapery, anything that was brought in should be of a Lethe culture. Anything made of the infrastructure itself would be Urithiru.
Yeah.
And having those distinctions was really helpful in terms of the different textures we used, the different materials we used. Everything Urithiru, of course, was stone. Unrealistically, but we did try our best, it's seamless stone with strata. And picking the strata colors and the way the strata lines moved, just that alone took weeks.
It was perfect.
Thank you.
Loved the strata. I thought y'all just did such a good job of rendering exactly what I see in my head.
Thank you so much for saying that. That was a conversation with Isaac for many, 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 many meetings of how specifically does the strata line run? Like, okay, well, it's supposed to be kind of like the fingers of a stone word, running their fingers across it. Isaac was very involved in what colors they were mixed together, because the books give like 10 different colors. It's like red, yellow, green, orange, there's so many different things going on.
Just to be clear, that's Isaac Stewart, the chief creative officer of Dragonsteel.
Yeah,
well
we'll
said.
be mentioning him a lot more coming up here as well, because he is going to be a key part of all of the production and kind of these elements. They have to go back to Dragonsteel, right? Like you cannot at this point say this is what the strata looks like in the Tower of Urithiru unless that is also approved by Dragonsteel, correct? Or is there more freedom than I'm imagining?
Well, to be honest, it depends on the thing. The strata was one thing because it had never been shown in a canonical form before. That was important. Again, it's such a large piece of Urithiru. It's so recognizable. Glyphs were another thing that Isaac Stewart and the creative team had to be very involved with. But things like textures and materials, we had a lot of freedom there. For instance, putting the chandelier cluster in the center of the dance floor, those are Moroccan influenced chandeliers. The light bulbs were exchanged to give it more of a glowing kind of gemstones. Yeah, exactly. Stormlight sphere effect. But we used Moroccan lanterns because it comes from the books. Like we just used the source material and tried to find as much as possible in the text. They talk about, elaborate rugs. They talk about lots of hanging lace, lots of tapestries, lots of fabric. And at the end of the day, there was a point when we were doing the designs where we decided, let's not do dedicated photo ops. The budget simply won't allow it. And that kind of doesn't feel like a wedding. Like this isn't an, Instagram museum. This is a wedding. And I think the exact phrase was, let's make the entire event a photo op.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah,
like it was so immersive that the whole thing was a great photo opportunity. And I think eliminating the specific designated photo op place made it feel that much more immersive and real and less kind of gimmicky. I'm at an event pretending to like be at Urithiru.
Right. Yeah. And that was the hope and the goal.
I was just going to say, to just go back to the immersive experience, the concept art that Marie Seeberger provided. Gorgeous, by the way. I mean, it was just like to really see it in full and see like this is what it would look like. That artwork also provided a lot of inspiration for Sunny of Valentine Bridal, who made Shallan and Adolin's, wedding costumes, and Kaylee from Kaylee Makes Crafts, who designed all the other costumes, including Jasnah, Dalinar, Kaladin, Navani, Wit. All of that to say that because this world has never been brought to life to this degree before, let's just say officially, Dragonsteel approved in this sense, it was just so key to get it right from the beginning and make sure that there were all these different touch points of, as Brandon was saying, that, you have people to bounce ideas off of, like you, Brooke and Tyler, who could also say, it's Urithiru, but make sure it's like Alethi themed, because that really helps hone in on what the look is, because being Alethi is already so very...
What is Alethi?
Right.
What is Alethi in real life? And so that's like another huge question is, what is Alethi culture? Like what it doesn't exist in real life. And, we are going out to prop houses. We're working with fabricators. We're renting things from warehouses. Like, we can't make every scenic set. Like, this isn't the TV show. This isn't the movie. And it's amazing that we were the first ones to adapt this into real life. Like, that's incredible. I've never had that experience before. But it also means that we have to do things a little bit differently. We don't have that reference material. We have to kind of decide for ourselves. Like, let's mix Moroccan, Mongolian, French Second Empire, Southeast Asian, Indian, like Middle Eastern. Like, we have to mix all these cultures together, decide what to cherry pick from each one, stay within our color palette, and use the materials that would naturally be found on Roshar. Like, we wouldn't see a bunch of cotton. We didn't allow any wool. That was a big one. No fur, anything. There's no fur animals except for in Shinovar.
Right.
That was one of the rules. Nothing that can be rented should look like it was taken from an animal earth animal.
So we have all of these different elements that are coming together. The semi-trucks are arriving in Salt Lake City. Your actors are chosen, and you have a script, which I believe was written by Daniel Phipps and approved by Brandon and Dragonsteel. And then you have all of the fans. I think I've heard the numbers 8,000 at Dragonsteel convention. You have 5 sessions planned for the Worldhopper Ball. And now we're kind of like the day of, the week of. I have one question before we get to just like the event itself. And that's, in that moment, what is your stress level the day of, like Thursday? We're all having a good time. Brooke had her first panel that she was on. We're enjoying Dragonsteel Nexus. And you, I imagine, have to be just sweat all the, like mainly sweat is how I would see myself.
Yeah, it's funny. So we got there December 1st was our first day on site. I didn't see the convention center until December 5th. Like I never left that conference room we were in. I never left. I spent my whole day and night there. And so did everyone on my team. Thursday night, I would honestly, and I don't mean this hyperbolically, I would put the stress level at an 11. That is when, no matter what, the doors are opening. The event will not be held. We will not reshoot this. Yeah. There's no editing. The doors are opening, and they're not gonna, and that's it. You have to be done. Whatever is ready is ready. Whatever isn't. And so for me personally, and my level of kind of attention to detail, especially knowing what this represents to so many people, I want them to see and feel like they are at the top of your ethereal. When they walk through the Shadesmar tunnel, I want them to notice, you know, the sky, the clouds overhead that shoot towards the sun that we put in there, the beads that were on the ground, the floating lights. Like, I need these people to immediately make themselves vulnerable and buy into the concept of what we've put out there. Otherwise, the immersive theater will not grab hold, and it won't be effective.
Yes, 100%.
And so trying to make sure that everything was just perfect up to the last minute definitely was at an 11.
You did it.
I agree. Like, I know we're just singing your praises, but like you did it. That thing that you wanted, you did it.
And I think this was a risk. It was the first year doing something like this. And I think even as a super fan, even as a theater person, there was a little part of me that was a tiny bit skeptical or scared, maybe is just a better word, of just like, what is I'm not really sure what this is going to be like. Like, we're going to go. I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited, but also a little bit scared. And then we definitely talked to people in the day or two leading up to the event who were like, oh, I'm not going to go. Like, I don't know. Immersive theater is like kind of weird, kind of uncomfortable. And then I started getting a little bit more scared, and I was like, oh God, what? I mean, I don't think it's going to be like that, but what if it is? What if it's weird and it's awkward and like it doesn't feel the way that I want it to feel? I'm so glad that you just said the words that you said, specifically that you wanted people to feel like comfortable being vulnerable immediately right off the bat, because I think there absolutely is that element of vulnerability is essential. That is the delineating line between an event like this feeling a little bit uncomfortable and an event like this feeling blissful is what I'm going to say, is like the way that it felt like all of my fears melted away, and every single person, I'm like tearing up again. Every single person that went through that tunnel, that stepped into that room, made the agreement, right? There's like this agreement between a performer or just an event maker and the audience that it's intended for, that the performer or the event person says, you know, here's what I made you. And then the audience's job is to reach back out metaphorically and kind of grab that hand and buy in, and to also meet the performer halfway, that it's like this merging of those two things. And that absolutely happened. Like, that capital C connection was made immediately. And that is the thing that made this event, that elevated this event. Like, I've been a part of many casts, and every once in a while you get a really special one where everyone just like clicks and gels, and it's this like transcendent experience. And even in that case, that experience is limited to the people in the cast, the people making the show. You don't necessarily get to have that connection with the audience. And you hope that that feeling, that magic gets across the fourth wall and like that they feel some of it, but you never really know. And this event was so special because it was that plus the audience, all 600 of those people, including all of the people behind the scenes and all of the people on the stage and all of the people in the audience got to experience that same, like, to go back to a word that Monika used, synergy and magic and like this just really alchemical thing that happens when people are together. Yeah, as a dorky theater person, I 100% believe in the magic of just like human beings being present together, that there's something special that happens when that happens. And that was the case here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there are so many examples of truly wonderful aspects from the nights that we were able to go. And I know that each night was special in its own way. Brandon Sanderson was at some of the events. I talked about how that made another connection to me, understanding when he's saying, Dalinar, I met you when I was 19 years old. Yeah. And to feel that recognition from him, but then to also know a little bit about your story, Brandon Finn, and my story and Brooke's story and Monika's story, and then applying that knowledge to the other people I was with in that room, the other people I was dancing with, the other people that were, eating food and having drinks and watching these performances. It all did sync up in a truly beautiful way when it became the best version of immersive theater. And so I think that is to your credit because of the preparation.
100%. I was just going to say that's not a given. Like, exactly. We're saying a lot of nice things, and like it did not have to be that way. It absolutely did not have to be that way. It was only that way because y'all set the stage and made a space that was safe for people to believe in.
You guys are making both of us cry. Just want you to know that. Thank you so much. Both of you are. It's just so beautiful to hear this. Like, this is why we do what we do.
Yeah,
truly.
This is the call and response of live events.
It is. Really. And there's, I wanted this to be like, as Shallan paints Bluth in Words of Radiance, and she sees, I'll cry thinking about that too. when she sees that he was holding it and it's an image of himself looking up, like that's when we entered this whole process. My goal was I want to create something for the world as it could be.
Yeah. And
people to behave within that world as they could be and step into those child selves. That was always my goal personally, was that every single person in that room could have that experience together. And something else I kept saying was this line from Willy Wonka that we are the music makers. We are the dreamers of dreams. And that's how I felt about everyone, not me. That is how I felt about the room and everyone who's walking into it, that everyone was dreaming a dream together. And as you said, the two of you said, drumming to a rhythm together. And I'm just so grateful that Dragonsteel, first of all, gave us the opportunity to do this, but that it also did connect and resonate on a level that in your wildest dreams, you don't know if it will.
To what Brandon is saying, and he already mentioned this, but I really do want to say like a huge, huge thank you to Dragonsteel, because this was a really big risk. This was a really big ask. This was a really big like turnover of responsibility of just saying like, yeah, we trust you to do this. There's not very many people that can do that. Brandon Finn himself struggles with assigning responsibility to other people because he's like, I can do it better myself.
No, I'm the only one that understands.
So for them to take that risk, it really is just such a sign of such a wonderful company that Brandon Sanderson and Emily Sanderson built together with everybody there. That's what it takes, really, that's what it takes, is every single person, the client, Paladin Creative, the vendors, the actors, the audience. It takes everyone buying into that to create this magical moment. I mean, Brandon and I are both, we've talked about this ad nauseum. We're both such imaginative children when we were growing up. We both believed in magic and all this other stuff. And then I was like, there was magic in that room.
Yes.
There was actual magic in that room. You cannot tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
There was actually, like, this is what magic is. It's here in the room right now. Like my, I'm getting goosebumps. I feel it in the air. I see it in the eyes of the people that I'm looking at. Like, there is actual magic in the room.
Yeah.
And we brought it to life, but mainly this guy right here, Brandon Finn, brought it to life.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so everyone has been very cute and been very complimentary, and we're just having a good old time. Dragonsteel is getting shout outs of how amazing they are. Now I want to get nerdy with you because there are some things going on at the ball, and it's part of this. It's part of the magic. Yes, it's part of the hard work. It's part of understanding the sources and getting these materials and having these connections. And then the night of, I walk in, everybody walks in, and we see these huge orange banners. They're all across the room. They have a massive new glyph on it. I want to talk about that. This is not the House Davar or House Kholin. This is the emerged glyph that represents Shallan and Adolin together. Can you tell me how that was created, how that happened, as well as any of the other glyphs that we saw on display at the event?
Absolutely. So the wedding glyph was one of the earliest things that we made together, and that came about because of the deadline of the invitations. When we asked very early on if there was a House Davar glyph, the creative team of Dragonsteel said there's not one canonically, and we said, well, could we make one? Do you guys have the bandwidth? I mean, don't forget, this is a team that's putting out Wind and Truth and plenty of other stuff. They're working on so much. And
one more thing to the pile, you know?
And Isaac and Sean Boyles in particular, really took this one on. And not only did he make a House Davar glyph, he continued to make a glyph pair of a merged Davar Kholin glyph. So we knew that we had the Davar glyph, the Kholin glyph, and the glyph pair, the Unity glyph pair. And we knew we had blue and red, and it was that third color that took some time to figure out. And again, this is all before the event was announced. The invitation had not gone out yet. And I don't remember when that was, probably June or July. I think it was right, July. Yeah. So around that time, we were still working. We had finished the Worldhopper Ball branding, and we moved on to the wedding of Adolin and Shallan's branding. Just like, you have a color palette at your wedding, they needed something at their wedding too. And so we knew we wanted to focus on the banners. It was a really, really cost-effective and like visually impactful way to represent the wedding and the merging of the houses. So we first went for purple because that's blue and red mixed together, and it just did not feel right. There was something muddy about it. And this was a note from Brandon specifically because of the Mongolian influence and because of the very traditional wedding that the Alethi tend to have. The ceremonies are very traditional. He said this needs to be bright and colorful. Like there needs to be more colors, in fact. It's too serious, and it needs to have more brightness, more levity. And we kind of came up with this orange to yellow gradient that we kind of thought of the sun and about the brightness of Shallan and Adolin together and what their union represents and what their love represents. And once we pitched that orange, about 24 hours before the invitation was going to go out, Dragonsteel was like, we love it. And that's how we decided on orange. And it was really because of Brandon Sanderson himself, because my mind never would have gone that direction personally. I would have gone darker. With the Stormlight Archive in general, it's a bit of a darker series. And I love that he injected that first literal bit of color with the orange, because then everything kind of became a bit more levity, opened up more joy.
Definitely more joy. And I think those costumes done by Valentine Bridal for Shallan and Adolin, they did represent something that was different than what I would have created. Like you're saying, you would have gone a little bit darker. I would have done something else if I was trying to imagine the wedding taking place. And to see the end result, it's so much better than anything that we could imagine. And that's the kind of collective nature. I am certainly interested in all the glyphs. So every single one.
Yeah, because the glyphs were on the wedding costumes as well.
Yes.
Which is really lovely.
They're wearing the glyphs as well.
So we had a little bit of a hand in the beginning of the costuming, and we had read the chapters, and we knew that Adolin, for instance, Adolin wears almost all white. I guess traditionally the groom is the one that wears white in Alethi culture with a slash of their color. And so we had a little bit of a design, like maybe it's kind of like this. But Marie Seaberger really was like the one to solidify the traditional feeling, like of the hat that Adolin wears is a very traditionally Mongolian looking hat. The headdress mixes kind of Ukrainian culture and Eastern European culture with, Southeast Asian culture. Like she really solidified the traditional feeling of the costumes. And if you read the text, even though there's only a few sentences, it holds up. There's, the large swooping cuffs for Shallan. Like all of it is in the text.
Absolutely.
And
as I was reading that scene, I was like just imagining the costumes from the ball, and it was just utterly perfect.
I love that. Oh my God, I love that.
And shout out to Sunny again from Valentine Battle, who just really like took that and really ran with it. I mean, she like used like top notch materials, also made Brandon Sanderson and Emily Sanderson's outfits for when they attended the Worldhopper Ball.
And
that's why the materials looked the same, because she used the same fabric to have that tie-in there. Also, like, I don't know if you saw Shallan, her wedding outfit had like pattern on it. He was sewn in on there, like that same dimpling that, you read about in the book. It was, that brightness was just so key. Again, being that it was a wedding.
Right. And
like, forget that the story itself is kind of dark. Like, this is a wedding. This is our bright, shining moment right now.
Yeah.
And going back to the glyphs. So now we have we have a Davar red, by the way. We made a Davar red, which is pretty cool. An official canonical Davar red. We already had a Kholin and a Kholin blue, and now we have a Unity Davar Kholin orange, all of which are canonical now. So outside of those were used everywhere, as much as we possibly could. Outside of those, we used family, which was in the invitation. And the Ketik, Jasnah's Ketik above it in the invitation. If you look at the original video that was released online, you can see family and you can see the Ketik. And then with the Glyphward Station, we had life, eternal, and family that you could choose to do the flash paper Glyphward burning. And Isaac Stewart and Sean Boyles basically told us, like, if you guys can find something that works, let us know, and we'll give you a thumbs up or thumbs down. But they just simply didn't have the time to like put anything custom together. But luckily, all of it was already out there already. At one point, I put love and eternal to make marriage.
Yeah.
And they were like, that's a great idea. No, but we like where your head's at, and now you can have a little bit more freedom. So they're
the experts, they know what they're doing.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we had talked a little bit about this on the Saturday of Nexus, Brandon, where those glyphs from like the Davar family and the Kholin family, it's not just mashing them together or like putting one on top of the other. There's new artwork that is kind of melding the two. And I feel like it has something to do with a new symmetry, or like it has to kind of like match the thing below or above in a specific way, only because the Alethi are so into symmetry and sometimes breaking the symmetry.
True.
And so it's incredible that we now have those pieces of canon material from the Worldhopper Ball. Were all the other glyphs or the Alethi script, because the women's script was seen on multiple different things. The goblets, I think this has been cracked. We're not like breaking new information here, but the goblets that went out to everybody have the women's script around, and that's Jasnah's wedding Ketek. That's from Rhythm of War. But tell me a little bit about those other examples of either glyphs or the women's script across the event, and then if there's any that you consider like Easter eggs or that haven't been shouted out online yet.
Okay. Oh, it's so exciting. Yeah.
Oh, the Easter eggs were exciting.
So much fun, guys. So the women's script is kind of in all of pretty much anything that was printed, like any of the printed collateral had women's script on it. So yes, the goblets had the Ketik and the invitation had the Ketik because earlier on we didn't want to get too crazy. That already existed and it made sense. It was a good little Easter egg. If people could kind of crack it and they could, they could see, oh, it's the wedding. That makes sense. She wrote it for the wedding. It says it at the end of Oathbringer. We also put women's script on the chowder wraps. We put them on the Glyphward stations. We put them in the wedding book. We put them on the wedding invitations. We put them on the goblets, and we put them on the bathroom sign.
Perfect.
Women's was in women's script. Men was in glyph.
Okay, that's exactly what I was going to ask. The attention to detail is why you were selected, why Paladin Creative is so amazing, and why this event works so well. Because I was about to say, like, as a man, I would
He's
completely
like, where
ignore
do
it.
I go?
Where do I, right?
Wouldn't know, but now I do because it's a glyph.
Everyone knows men can't read.
And the wedding book had on the very first page, and I realized obviously no one's going to see it. They're going to turn to the page and sign it. I told a few people who were in line each day to like, you should check out the first page. There is a dedication from Sabarial and Polona that says to marriage or some such nonsense. And then the Sabarial glyph mimicking the to glory or some such nonsense line that he says in A Way of Kings. Or
Incredible.
Yeah, I know the Chowda station had the joke, it's cheaper than water.
It's cheaper than water. That was on the wrap. Yes, there was women's script on the wrap. And it's, again, I think I even cited that. Yeah, Words of Radiance, chapter 46. Kaladin says, you can't eat that. It's cheaper than water. And I just imagine this like old timey, like, Chowda, it's cheaper than water.
The level of detail that you're hearing about, like all these Easter eggs and all this stuff, is in part due to Brandon's own dedication of literally going through the books, reading them, and highlighting every single sentence, passage, anything that had any reference to anything to do with decor, anything to do with costuming, anything to do with food, beverages, of course, anything at all. Like, you should see this spreadsheet that he made that literally is just a breakdown of all of these sentences, the page number, which book it came from, which category it falls into. Like, that's why the detail comes through. Like, even if, I think we talked about this when we saw you in person at the Worldhopper Ball, was that even if you're not noticing all of these details, even if you're not picking up on every single one, there's something about it where like in your peripheral or your subconscious picks up on it anyways, and it helps with the immersive process. So it doesn't feel like a loss if not everybody picked up on every single little detail, because we know that that's what helps make it an immersive experience.
Absolutely. 100%. I respect a great spreadsheet. I'm currently organizing all of my Wind and Truth quotes in a spreadsheet and like tagging them for specific topics.
A lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah. I was like, Oathbringer is very filled out because it's the one that to me is most kind of important. That's when it takes place at the end of Oathbringer. But man, it's a lot of work. Do you want us to just kind of go off on that? I have like a whole list of like other Easter eggs. I'm happy to point them out.
Yeah. Tell me all the secrets. Give me every bit of information that you've been holding back and just like nobody will know. I'll know about it, man. So
now our audience will know about
exactly. Like, so bring it to the audience. Tell me everything that you worked in to the Worldhopper Ball. Tyler from the future here, telling you that this begins our light spoiler section for Wind and Truth. But if you do not want any spoilers for Wind and Truth, you should go to timestamp 2 hours, 21 minutes, 56 seconds exactly. Last warning.
So I think that we should go kind of like in order from the Shadesmar tunnel
entrance. Yeah, I love that.
Into the actual space. So
Okay.
in Shadesmar, you had
before that.
Before
that. There you go.
No,
you mentioned the chapter
we did,
heading.
but still, let's just do it.
Let's just do it again. Yeah.
The archway entrance, right when you come in, says characters from a play. It's chapter 97 in Wind and Truth. Then in Shadesmar.
Then we have, the clouds and the sun that appear in the tunnel above guests and their heads. Like, again, you've seen that on the cover of Rhythm of War, I believe.
Yeah.
You have those clouds that was mimicking that, as well as in Shadesmar. I think we pointed out to two people.
Yeah.
The King's Drop was actually in Shadesmar as well. There was a little red light amongst all of the
all the beads
and all the mylar that we had in there. There was a little King's Drop in there, it was like shining bright and red.
Yeah, so, and it stuck up.
So if you saw that,
props to you.
Dalinar threw it into the sea.
Part of the ocean.
Where did it end up? Ended up in Shadesmar. All right. And then in Shadesmar. And above, I just don't know if people realize, because obviously we know the little flames and we know the little beads and all that, the obsidian. I don't know if people noticed, honestly, above them were 4 lines of iridescent mesh that went wide and narrowed as they got closer to a single light at the back. And I didn't hear anyone say anything about it. So I was like, either they're just like, oh, that's cool in their heads, or it just kind of was like, oh, decor. I wasn't sure.
It was very obvious to me.
Oh, okay, cool.
My phone background right now is a picture from the inside of the Shadesmar tunnel.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, with all the clouds like going towards the central sun.
I was going to say that in Shadesmar too, like I noticed a lot of guests as they were coming in, they would kind of like not run through, but of course I can imagine as a guest coming to this Worldhopper Ball for the first time, you're like, I just want to go.
Of course.
And so a lot of people just like, went through the tunnel and went to the event and saw the whole thing. But then a lot of guests also went and turned back and they're like, can I walk through the Shadesmar tunnel again? It's like, of course you can. Yeah. Please take your time, take videos, pictures, enjoy it.
That's kind of what we did. We were like so excited, like going through the tunnel. And then I was like, wait, stop. Let's take a picture. Let's like take in where we're at right now. Okay, now we can go forward.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. So getting through the Shadesmar tunnel, the next thing that was chock full of Easter eggs was the wedding gift table.
Right.
We tried to mix in very light elements of what you would find in a Western wedding that a lot of guests would be familiar with, very lightly, like a wedding gift table. First thing you see when you get through the door at a wedding, usually a gift table. And that had all kinds of stuff. That had Navani's light prism, that had a reference to the 47 swords that Adolin received as a gift. Dragonsteel employees literally brought their swords from home when I was like, guys, we need a lot of swords. We need like 47 swords. And they all were like, challenge accepted, no worries.
We got it.
I'll bring my sword.
And we threw as many as we could fit on the table. Then we had the dedication from Sabara and Polona. And there are a few gifts that are listed in, I don't remember if it's Oathbringer or Winded Truth, but there's a few gifts that are listed that were given to Shallan, including a dried fish from Lift that was there, an incense box, and perfume bottles. Those were all on the table. And then because this is a Worldhopper Ball, we also had a green aviar, a Tress teacup, and a key ring that was supposed to signify Vev's golden keys. So maybe Vev the Herald showed up. I don't know.
They do have a way of showing up in interesting places. And we might talk about that in just a moment. But I want to make sure we definitely segment that particular section.
Sure.
Before we get there, is there anything else? So like we're now at the tables.
There's more, dude.
I know. We step through to like the next section. To the right and left, I think there were the food and drink tables or the setaways for those.
Want to shout out Alex Locke, our F&B manager, who created such wonderful meals for the Worldhopper Ball. He's a fan himself, so he did a lot of research to make the chowder and Rox curry, as well as the different colored wines.
Yeah, the wines were incredible.
And those wines match. If you go and you read the actual flavor description of each one, they do match. Like there's one that's nutty and there's almond syrup in that. Like literally read the wheel and you'll see, and look at the ingredients that we included. Every single one of those is built specifically to the description, the only descriptions that we have from Dragonsteel canonically.
Oh my gosh, I did not catch that detail. That's incredible.
Yeah, there wasn't just randomly like, blue, red, yeah.
I also definitely need like the recipes for those drinks because I want to make them at home.
Well, we got them. We
Perfect. We'll take them.
Physical signs.
The actual like name of the bar itself is Jez's Duty, right?
Jez's Duty, which is referenced in Rhythm of War and in Wind and Truth as Adolin's favorite bar.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anyone talk about it. And I was always surprised. I was like, I thought that was like an obvious one, but no one's brought it up that I've heard. Jez's Duty.
Brandon, I don't think you realize like what kind of a research hole you fell into for this Worldhopper Ball.
Dedication.
The dedication, yeah.
And for me personally, in this area, my favorite thing was the Gancho Catering Cousins.
Yeah.
That started as a logo because we were mocking up menus and I was like, I don't want to put the Worldhopper Ball logo. That doesn't feel right. I don't want to put the Unity logo at the bottom. That doesn't feel right. And I think we started with this bridge and then put like bridge 4 and then it was like, that doesn't feel right. And then we're like, what about the Herdaz? Like, there's so many of them. And Lopen pretty much started the Chowda movement. Like, that would make sense. And then we were like, well, what do we do for an image? Like, how do we make a logo? And then I was looking at the chapter headers in Dawnshard, and of course, you've got the 3 arms of his spren. So we took the 3 arms, we put a flag in it with a banner that went across, and then wrote out Gancho Catering Co., which is Gancho Catering Cousins. And that's on every single F&B related item. And I have like the original drawings in my notebook and stuff. I can't believe they let us do that. I asked Dragonsteel and Kellen, and they were like, oh, we love that. Canonically, yeah, the Herdazians cater the wedding. That's so fun. And one little tiny piece of canonical activity that I got permission from Dragonsteel for this. I didn't know how to make it obvious. I think I whispered it to a few people, but I don't think it's going to spread. In the Lost Metal, I think Wayne eats Chowda.
Yeah.
Yes.
I asked, how did Chowda get to Scadrial?
Okay. Got you.
And what if it was taken through the Worldhopper Ball? Someone tried it from Scadrial.
Of course.
And then brought it there, and they had a great idea to make some Chowda on Scadrial. And I was told that was okay. They were like,
yes,
why not?
You have done it. You spread Chowda throughout the Cosmere.
Chowda, canonically spread throughout the Cosmere, comes from Adolin Kholon's wedding, catered by Lopen and the Gancho Catering Cousins.
What a piece of information for us to have. Wow.
We are breaking news now. We're a new podcast. We're just breaking Cosmere news. Truly incredible.
Man, the fandom owes you such a debt. Not just for the incredible event, but for like literally making new like facts and artifacts be created for us.
That was the goal. That's the experiential novella part, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we're making new content like for you to experience. Like that's what we wanted. And those are the main ones. Besides that, a quick few. Kaladin, Adolin duel. One of the only like words that I really made sure was like 100% included was, I'm not good with words, but I'll see what I can do. I just had to do the clap back, and it's funny that that came up again in Wind and Truth. Kaladin does a last clap of the sword, and then they end their performance back to back. Adolin also wears a cape, which I believe comes up in Wind and Truth.
Yep.
Kaladin, we predicted Kaladin's future as a musician. Just want to say it now.
Yeah, DJ Stormblessed became
DJ Stormblessed.
Oh
when
my
he
gosh.
started messing with that flute in Wind and Truth, I was like, we called it. Called it.
I, again, really quickly want to shout out Abby, our 3rd full-time employee of Paladin Creative. Without her, literally, she made all of the design aspects. The Gancho Catering Co. logo that we just talked about, she made all of those things. She is absolutely a force of nature, such talent. We're so lucky to have her. The one thing that I got to design was the DJ Stormblessed assets, which was super fun because at the last minute, it was literally the week before Brandon Finn was leaving to go to Salt Lake City to load in.
It was the
for
day
this.
before the
Oh,
flight.
I think it was the day
prior to the flight.
I think it was the day before the flight. And that's the funny thing in design too. And Abby and I have actually talked about this, how there are some things where, someone's like, oh, can you just make this quick change? And it's like, oh, it's not that quick as you think it might be. And then there's some things that are like, oh, I'm sorry, like, can you just do this? I know it's going to take a long time. And this was one of those things where Brandon was like, can you just do this and come up with something? And I was like, you know what? Yes. And again, one of those guideposts, one of those synergy moments where I was like, I see the vision. And so we made the emoticon of Kaladin, with like the little teardrop with the scars on his forehead. And then also I found the font that for honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do. And the DJ Stormblessed lip. That was just so much fun.
That was in the original pitch.
The whole thing was absolutely perfect. Like, it could not have been better. That whole graphic sequence was maybe one of my favorite things. I loved it so much.
It was so much fun to see it too, because I was like, obviously I'm creating like a static logo, but I was like, that was such a fun 180 in that event that,
it was so
that
good,
Brandon had thought of.
I wanted it so badly. I can't believe Dragonsteel never made me take it out. Like, the whole time, I was like, they're going to eventually be like, okay, it's funny, but you got to, we're not going to do it. And they just, they're like, no, we trust you. If you think people will like that, if you think the millennial demographic responds well, and I was like, they'll respond well.
Yeah, we responded very well.
Oh my gosh. Immediately. I think the first contemporary song that DJ Stormblessed played was Low. And I just turned to Tyler and I was like, oh, this man knows his audience. He knows that there's a bunch of 35-year-olds out here. Yeah. and
it
I'm
made sense
into it.
Because it's a wedding. So it's like, that's what you kind of hear at weddings too.
Yeah.
I think I told this to Tyler already, but by the way, fun fact, we had to do a seismic test. We had to get a seismic reading because the floor was shaking. This is a convention center, mind you. This is a giant stone structure that is meant to house like 25, 30,000 people.
Yes.
And our little room, our little 20,000 square foot room with 650 people was shaking so much that the floor below, the lights were flickering, and we had to do a quick seismic test to make sure that everything was still solid, and it was completely fine. It was at an abundance of caution. No one was ever actually worried, but my lighting director was like, let's just do it. Put our minds at ease.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't want to shake the whole place down.
It was so funny. Yeah, it seems like everyone had a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a great blending of the immersion that we've talked about. And then I think it's interesting, Monika, that you bring up, we weren't sure if Dragonsteel would let us keep this because it's not, obviously, it's very contemporary. It's not in the world at all. And I thought it was perfect, the blending of both the immersion and yet the acknowledgement of like, we are on Earth and like these are the songs that we listen to.
Yeah.
And
the
like
transition.
This funny joke of like DJ Stormblessed and like emo Kaladin, and those like in jokes I think also add to the immersion, to the community aspect. It like is that little wink and nod of like, we know the material well enough that we know how to riff on it. We know the jokes to tell. And then it also feels, even more immersive, even though you're pulled out of it at the same time.
Right. But you get it. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly what you're saying. It's working within live events and I say this all the time. Like if you were to do pure immersion, like first of all, there's no official Rosharan music. Like we can't create it. We don't have the timeline for that or the rights or anything. And working within live events as an art form. And to me, this is one of those things where it's like you have to trust your audience to get the reference to enjoy the music based on what you assume they will enjoy. Thank you for saying that, because that was just one of those things where it's like I thought it would resonate well adapting to a live event, not like a movie, not like a TV show, but a live event specifically.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you nailed it. And part of the reason for all of this immersion that we're talking about are those performers. So I'd love to talk about them more in depth. We had, as we mentioned, the actors, the performers, the aerialist, as well as the Bridge 4 kata. And I would just love to know what was the kind of the vision and the stories behind the scenes for that group of people that brought these characters to life.
How long do you want this podcast to be, my man?
I mean, we're already pushing like 3.5 hours. So this is our longest, but I'm fine. I would do this forever.
Literally, as long as you are willing to talk to us. Yeah. And when you are tired and you're like, this is our day off, we need to like go eat dinner.
Just let us know.
We're fine. We want to make sure you're cool because we're cool to stay on the phone with you for as long as we need.
And I'm going to try to say it a little bit more succinctly as a story. So can you phrase the question again, Tyler, in a way that I might be able to answer a bit better?
Can you tell me a little bit about the behind the scenes relationships, the actors and the performers? They're obviously committed. We talked about how they were fans, but I want to know what that feels like for these performers. How are they relating? What are the stories that they're telling you and what's kind of going on in their minds? Maybe down the road, we have a big reunion event and we invite everybody to come on. But from your perspective, what are some of the things that you were doing?
First of all, please do that. Oh my goodness. We got so close so quickly. First of all, the cast did not meet each other until December 3rd.
Oh my gosh.
They had never met. So they had only done 2 1-hour Zoom rehearsals.
Which props to them for being such professionals and really pulling it out of the bag in that sense of just saying like, okay, we're working with what we have. We have a wonderful script. We know the material, the source material very well.
Yeah.
And just like, okay, if we're in, then we're in. I mean, I really have to give props to all of them for really buying into it right away, because I think that if they hadn't, then it would have felt really rough and ready.
Right.
But the fact that they did, and they were like, we want it to be a success because we are fans and we would want to see this be a huge success, and we would want to see real life Shallan and Adolin and all the other characters. Because of that dedication is, I think, why it worked out so well despite the time constraints and despite the lack of in-person rehearsals.
Definitely. And they had that immediate bond that, let's be real, only fans of the Cosmere have.
Yeah.
That like immediate thing of like, oh, you like Brandon Sanderson? Oh my goodness, me too.
Yep.
And so they didn't have to work their way through each other's armor. Like, again, there's so much of this, the words we used at the beginning of this event were vulnerability and intimacy. And like, those are the feelings we wanted to capture.
Mm-hmm.
And that resonated all the way over to the cast. You know, just when they first met, they were already like, let's be friends. Did we just become best friends?
Yeah.
Yep. And so the first day they met was on December 3rd in real life. And they were all, God, they were just so wonderful. Like, and they all had a story. Cliff, who is Kaladin, he put a video out, you know, he's like, I've wanted to be this man my entire life. It's been my dream. And Jackson, with Wit, he reached out to us in the first place. And Jackson Miller was same thing. I've always identified as Adolin. It's something I've always wanted. And Savannah was Shallan. My goodness, Savannah, the way Savannah talked about Shallan and what Shallan Davar meant to her as a young woman was breathtaking. I think we all want to know what it's like to question our own identity and to feel like you're in a place that you'll never get out of, but you do it anyways, you know?
Yeah.
And everyone they understood the characters so well. And they were coming up to me. This was the first time that I really understood what we had all made together.
Right.
Was when the actors were coming up to me being like, hey, we just tried out our first dance. Can we show you? And I was like, oh yeah, you guys already did that? Sure. Do you know the music? And they're like, yeah, someone, Sarah already gave us the Howl's Moving Castle music. So we just did a dance. Can we show you? And then same thing with like Adolin and Kaladin.
They're dual.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Adolin, Kaladin, Cliff and Jackson decided, this was not scripted, decided they wanted to do a duel. They were just like,
the whole thing. They were just like, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Because they were like, this is what would happen. Like, and that was the few things we had in there already. Obviously, the honor sprint, it was like, well, what would Navani give as a gift? Like, Navani loves Spren and she loves to work with Spren. And so there was like, the honor Spren dance kind of came from her. What would Kaladin give as a gift? A Bridge 4 Kata dance, you know, of course. Like, that's what he knows. That's his art form. His art form is battle.
Which also was really cool because Jackson and Cliff came up with that, as Brandon said, on the spot. And then Brandon Sanderson came in during rehearsals while we were still setting up, like the space was not ready yet. And we were like, it's going to look better, we promise. And they just like, again, props to their professionalism. They were like, we want to add this in. Brandon Sanderson, do you want to see a rehearsal of us doing our battle dance? And mind you, this is no shade to their work of any kind. They just hadn't practiced it that much.
Of course. Right.
Yeah.
And so props to them in that sense of having that courage to be like, you know what? We are ready to show Brandon Sanderson this. And they went out and we played the music and they did it and they whatever, you know, I have this video, I'm standing behind Brandon Sanderson and he's watching it and they're doing like their little battle during rehearsals, all the lights are on or whatever. And I remember just being so mesmerized and being like, wow, again, to show the dedication of fans, regardless of what your involvement is with this event, to be like, no, I want to go the whole hog. I want to show you everything that we can possibly do. And it's like, so all fear is gone in that sense of like, I want to do this fight sequence and Brandon Sanderson is here. We're going to show him right now. And the honor sprint, same thing. Also fans, they went and they did their whole, out. Yes.
The honor sprint and the Bridge 4 Kata group were both, Dragonsteel connected us to both of them because I approached Dragonsteel with like, I would love to have an aerialist and have like a spear dancing thing. And they connected us to both the HEMA group with Veronica and they connected us to Sophia with the aerialist group. And I was just totally blown away. I mean, I saw a few videos of the stuff they've done in the past. And like, that's always very cool to see, but it doesn't hit you like it does when you're like, they made this for us. They made this for the guests. Totally original choreography by both the HEMA group and by the aerialists. And again, all massive, massive, massive fans.
Wow.
And they were just so happy to be part of it. And I was so grateful that Dragonsteel already knew, already knew people who were already interested and had expressed interest in doing something with them at some point. The HEMA group was even had panels, I believe, that they were on.
Had been part of that other Dragonsteel Nexus events.
Exactly.
The Aerialists, to me, transformed the event and kind of just elevated it to something that did feel special, just as it would feel special if Honor Spren were performing a dance. And I thought that it was mesmerizing, and as an Aerialist performance is often very mesmerizing. You're just in awe of what these human beings are doing. But then because it's at this event, because I'm imagining them as Spren and they're introduced as Spren, all of a sudden the question of how are these humans doing it, it kind of goes away. And it's just like, these beings are existing in front of me. And it doesn't necessarily go to the question of, oh, how much flexibility does that require in stretching? And like, do they need to take Advil
I was
afterwards?
still thinking about how strong these young women are.
Go ahead, Monika.
I remember, again, to give credit where credit is due, Dragonsteel obviously extended a lot of trust to Paladin Creative to make this happen. Brandon and Finn also extended a lot of trust into all of these other groups as well. For example, Brandon said with the Aerialists, Sophia, who leads the group, was like, I have a song for this.
Oh, yeah.
I know exactly what we're doing.
I was very selective with the music, just to be clear. I was very like, okay, the Adolin Kholin duel, fight to Mombasa. Like, they're going to come out at the Pirates of the Caribbean, like this specific, when Adolin and Shallan first come out, that's what they come out to. They're dancing to Housemaid Castle. I was very strict with like how I wanted it to feel. And so when they came to me.
So Sophia came to Brandon, was like, I have the music. Don't even worry about it. Brandon played it for me in the car, I think as we were like parking the car in our garage. I remember like grabbing his arm, like tears in my eyes. I was like, what?
Yeah, it was
like, not only is this
Winter
music
Song by Marcus Warner.
Not only is this music just so glorious, and then at the same time, I was like, okay, so I'm listening to this in the car. On top of that, you're telling me I'm going to be there in person and watching Aerialists dance to this. I mean, Brandon kept saying how he said this about our own wedding too, by the way, which was like, he's like, I want everybody to cry. Because that's my one goal. I want everybody to cry. I was like, Brandon, I know that you and I are Care Bears. We're such touchy-feely people. That's our brand, but that's not necessarily, maybe everybody's brand. And with this, I was like, if there's a dry eye in the house after this, I would be very shocked. If there was at least, if people walk away from this event not feeling touched in some way, this was one of those moments, one of those touchstone moments where I was like, this really brings it to life. And again, it turned down the volume a little bit in the sense of like, the lights were dimmed.
The sense of awe.
The sense of quiet awe of watching them like go through these motions, through this dance, and you really get to just sit there and feel this moment. The kata dance too, which, if you think about all over the world, you have these traditional dances that groups of people do. They also went full out with their spears and had this whole choreographed dance. They understood the space. They understood what their reach of their spears could be. It was just, that was also so mesmerizing and beautiful. And the fact that they all got together and did all of this choreography together, that they did this kata dance and really got the sense of Bridge 4 through a kata dance and not just, the words that they say on the page. I think that was also just really meaningful. I think that's what we love about any of this stuff. When anything gets adapted at all, is like, it doesn't matter if like every single event that played out in the source material gets brought to life in whatever the adaptation is. What matters really is that the heart, the real true message of that source material gets brought to life. Like Lord of the Rings is not the same as Lord of the Rings in the books, and yet everybody loves the movies because that is what the heart of the books is as well. So I just want to say to all of the performers, whether they were the character actors, whether they were the kata group, or they were the Aerialists, they really got the heart of what all of these different pieces were. And I'm just so grateful that we were put in touch and got to work with all of these people because they really were truly amazing.
And all of that in about 6 days fully.
Hell yeah.
Really.
Incredible. Like truly to try to get stage combat and aerialists and music and acting, like to get
That's why
all
opening
of
night
those
was a little
things,
tough.
What?
Yeah.
To do any one of those things in 6 days is astonishing. And then to have them all in a singular event where they also like seamlessly came together and created this really lovely kind of ebb and flow of energy during the evening. I'm kind of astonished to hear you say that some of these things like weren't even originally planned, but were like brought to you later, because the way that they gelled together during the night, and again, like kind of gave this flow of the evening and different flavors of experience that we got to like move to and from. It was so perfect.
I mean, that's the heart and soul of a live event to me. The stuff where you're like, oh no, A won't work. What do we do? How about B? That won't work either. But C, that's interesting. I never would have thought of that until the fire is right underneath me. And C ends up being just what it was missing. And it's like this beautiful blend of like people and talent and skill and creativity. And I love it.
I was just going to say that's what I love about events. And that's why I'm so happy to be part of Paladin Creative, is because it is inherently solution based.
Right.
You cannot say, oh, that's just not going to happen, or it's just not going to work. You have to come up with some sort of a solution.
Yeah.
And so event production is inherently optimistic. And
I like that, Monika.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And so that's what was so amazing about this event too, because on top of that being the truth, on top of that, you also have all of these fans that are working on this event, and they're saying, no, like, we're not going to let this be a flop in any kind of way. Like, I'm going to bring my A game, and we are going to work together as a team. There was no sense of like hierarchy. There was no sense of like, I'm the main character, or, you know, this person's going to take control in any way. Like, everybody knew their part and worked together as a team in that sense. It was just, I'm honestly gobsmacked, like thinking back on it now that it's like, again, marinated, and I'm thinking back to that time that we spent in production and pre-production during the event and afterwards. It's just incredible the way that everybody came together and like seamlessly fit together like puzzle pieces and said, I know exactly where my place is. Not in a conforming way, in a kind of unity way of like really like unite them.
Yeah.
You know?
We lift the bridge and we carry it together. It felt like destiny. It was the most surreal feeling. It was the most beautiful feeling. Most beautiful thing I've felt ever professionally. And just watching all of these people, like I'm just gonna re-say what Monika has said and re-say what Tyler has said and re-say what Brooke has said. Like, I've just never seen such a moment of beauty and the human will to create something and push through anything, you know? It was so amazing.
It was magic. It was actual, real magic. We made it happen.
Exactly. We got the witches' coven together and we started brewing up some magic, and this was the result of the spell that you cast. There's one person that was a character actor that we have not talked about, and this is the big one. And so I'm going to take a moment here to say very clearly, while we have done some references to Wind and Truth, while we have mentioned some of the storylines of Wind and Truth, right now we are going to spoil Wind and Truth. There is
not all of it, but
not all of it.
A big part.
I'm not going to go into all of the details of the plot, but there is an element that we are going to talk about. It happened at the Worldhopper Ball. It involves Shallan, and I am providing all of your opportunities to now pause the podcast. This is considered heavy spoilers. You have until the timestamp 2 hours, 21 minutes, 56 seconds exactly. If you do not want heavy spoilers for Wind and Truth. So there's one more actor who showed up, and I have been dying to talk to you. I mean, I talked to you about this on the night of, like 2 a.m. I was like,
I need to text Brandon.
Exactly.
I must know.
We see a character like kind of come through the crowd, or they are moving in the background. And then Wit, from the stage where all of our main characters are, he kind of runs over and he starts talking, and he says,
like, ushers her out of the area.
Exactly. Takes her away from the event. And then Shallan has kind of this moment of what seems like one of her time skips when she is blank and is jumping over a difficult memory or difficult moment.
It does seem like that.
It does seem like that.
Whoa.
Because
and she just says it's nothing. Like, she's trying to convince herself that nothing has happened. Everything is fine.
Yeah. Oh man.
It's not fine.
And then we're right back into the flow.
Yeah, the flow continues, but now we are taking that little moment and going to talk about it until you're tired of talking about it, because this was Chana. Chana the Herald is at Shallan and Adolin's wedding.
Mama!
Because Chana is Shallan's mother. She's the daughter of a herald. Chana is there. How did this happen?
What, we haven't even talked about this like on the podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know.
We haven't been able to fully vent and discuss all of the different
I'm so excited
aspects.
Because I was so convinced, and I just presented this theory at my panel that morning. And I was like, yes!
So
Brandon Sanderson, you have so much material. Oh my gosh, we could talk for hours.
I know we can, and yes, we can. This to me is what the ultimate kind of expression of the experiential novella ended up being. Originally, this was supposed to be a low stakes wedding celebration. Whatever happens here, it's canon. Whatever, who cares? It's a wedding. And there was a point when we got the chapters in ahead of time, way back in like March. Chana is mentioned in them, and Shallan is like trying to find her. And obviously, we had no other context besides that. By the way, I was like, Monika was like, maybe it's like a time traveling interstellar type thing. Like we really didn't know the context. We just knew that she appeared at the wedding. Shallan had specifically pulled that out of her mind, and she was confronting it. Originally, we were not planning to include Chana. We were going to leave it out because it's a spoiler. It's a spoiler. It's a big reveal. Like, we didn't, and Dragonsteel also was like, they'll find out in the book. So this ended up happening because Brandon himself asked for it. Brandon Sanderson was like, I want people to find out about Chana at this wedding. He was like, I think it would be really cool. And it's really special for those people who did come to this event. It's just one more thing that they get to experience for the first time ever. And
shout out to Brandon Sanderson for being such a G about it. He was like, I just let him know. Just let him know. So, they bought tickets.
Yeah. Now, one more thing. More recently, after Brandon said he wanted to have this happen, and then we took on the casting, something we realized was that we cannot justify paying an actor to come in for 3 minutes. Someone who we have to buy, we have to get the costume, we have to do all the makeup for them. Like, it's quite a cost. And for someone to come in for just a minute or two, it was a really tough cost to justify. And we had to say, I don't think we're going to be able to do it. Like, I really, really wish there was another way. When we took over the casting, Sarah Reidinger, our show manager, who we hired, had a question for me early on. She said, first of all, do you guys remember when I said this all felt like destiny?
Yeah.
Just hold on to that. Sarah Reidinger said, hey, so before I got this job and we started talking, I had already been planning to go to the convention Nexus as Chana. I already have my cosplay for Chana made. I even made a sword. She's basically was like, is there any way I can wear it and maybe just be a guest or something? Because I really would hate for it to go to waste. And I was like, Sarah, are you freaking kidding me? Like, it really was one of those things that we had essentially given up on. Yeah. Being able to pull it off, made peace with it. And then Sarah Reidinger out of nowhere says, I already have all of the things that you need.
And who makes a Chana cosplay? Like, she's the only person I've ever seen. Like, what? And she just happens to be your showrunner. Like, that's insane.
And she's also an actress, by trade. The way it lined up was just so beautiful. And that was one more of those things of just, wow, we can't fail. Like, this is all meant to happen. Everything's meant to happen that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have Chana. at all.
When that was happening in real time at the event, it's almost like a blink and you miss it sort of event within the actual Worldhopper Ball. The audio guys were also trying to be very like secretive about it, you know, trying to be intentional about when Wit's microphone and Chana's microphone would come in and all that stuff. And it was like, you know, and depending on where you were located in the ball, you might not even get to see.
We did want to obscure it a bit.
There was that intention to kind of be a little bit more like wink about it and not so in your face. But once Wit brought her over and brought her into Shadesmar, into the tunnel, I would always, whenever I was there, I would be standing by the tunnel. And I remember just like opening my mouth wide and like putting my hand over my mouth and like raising my eyebrows really high, like really in a like melodramatic way to like run that point home. And I remember people looking at me and being like, wait, that was real. Like that, you know, like just to really kind of bring that point home of like, it was just so funny because the first night, everybody was just, what?
People thought that was like a thing that happened,
subtle.
like an ultra.
Yeah.
It was too subtle, and we made it less subtle.
Yeah. And I think like part of the subtleness I enjoyed in the way that you're speaking of it. Like it was a little bit still of an Easter egg, still of like, wait, something exciting happened. But the first night it was very subtle to the point where like it was like, wait, was that real? Was that not real? Was that part of the show?
Altercation?
Yeah.
There were some lines of dialogue. So Wit says anything. I don't know if Chana ever said anything or was supposed to be a speaking actor, but Wit says something like, why don't you just go back to Braze where you belong? And then he might have a couple of other lines as he's walking. But from that kind of side of the equation, how do you make the decision of what is too subtle? What's too in your face? Are each of those decisions needing to go back up to Brandon Sanderson and then come back down? Or is it something like you have the freedom to have your show manager be Chana and they can kind of do what they want? Where is kind of like those lines and that distinction drawn?
Well, Chana was, I think, saying like, I just want to see her. I just want to see her.
I do have the script right here.
Okay, perfect. Look at you, coming prepared.
No big deal. I will definitely tell you, there was a little bit of freedom for Jackson and for Sarah both to be able to kind of play around and see what felt right.
Which I do have to say, while Brandon's looking for the passage, it was like really fun to see on the first night everybody's face of confusion. And then on subsequent sessions, have people be like ready with their phones and already like recording it. And by the end, everybody was like, oh my God, there it is. You know,
right. So
cool.
So to be super clear, like in the script, there's only description. Chana enters the room through the Worldhopper Ball portal undetected. She roams the room looking toward the stage for Shallan. As the aerialists finish their routine, applause dies down. Chana makes her way toward the side of the stage that Shallan is on. Shallan sees her and grabs Adolin's arm. Wit swoops in and ushers Chana from the stage, the two bickering as they go. Shallan's gaze remains frozen on the spot where she just saw Chana, but Adolin, remarking on the aerialist performance to whoever's seated on his other side, has completely missed the interaction. Shallan, are you all right? And it goes back to normal. But what happened was that Sarah and Jackson both started to say things, and those stuck. Like, I know that Jackson, by the third session, had started saying, why don't you go back to Braze and stay there? You had your chance to reconcile. And I know that Sarah started saying, I want to see her. I just want to see her. Like, those are the two lines that I remember they said consistently after night 3.
And just to be clear, again, I know that we've switched back and forth between the actors' names and stuff. There are 2 Jacksons that were part of this performance. There's Jackson Dickert, who played Wit, and Jackson Miller, who played Adolin. So if we're mentioning a Jackson, hopefully context enough is to provide with who plays who.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Not every single person listening is as obsessed as we are with the entire cast. So I'm like, of course I know the Jackson you mean when you're talking about Wit, or the Jackson you mean when you're talking about Adolin. But thank you for that distinction and for just continually referencing all of these amazing people or the vendors. I think that this moment, like you said, gained notoriety very quickly in the fandom.
It was one of the things that I was really glad about that we went to the first night, because I know that it kind of, I don't know if you can call that a spoiler, but it kind of got spoiled by, the last night, and I'm glad that we got to experience it. even though it was like kind of subtle and more confusing, I'm glad that we got to see it the first night and have that like, ooh, true surprise moment.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it wasn't necessarily, is it confusing what you're trying to do? Like, I got it.
Yeah.
But the question was, wait, Brandon, is this real? Were you able to do this without approval? Did you have to get this confirmed by And so thank you for taking me through the whole process. Because I was just like, are they allowing you to just make up that Shallan's mother is a herald? No, it has to be approved.
Can you imagine if I was like, I went rogue?
Exactly.
Now we'll see.
I mean, we were just talking to, I forget who we were talking to. It must have been someone at Nexus about how, no, it was Shandel. We were talking to Shandel Green about how the Chana Mama theory is like basically just completely accepted by the fandom at this point. Like it's been around for so long. We're all just like, yeah, that's true. Right. Even though we had no confirmation. So like we would have totally been into it if you had just been like, this is true as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, that was another reason that they felt comfortable with it. Because, like, I mean, early on, again, we were like, is there any way maybe we could throw this in? I don't know. That's tough. Like, like everyone at Dragonsteel was like, most people already assume it. Like,
yeah.
You know, it's not, we're not doing anything like Kaladin is actually Aiden Alcium. Like, you know, like, yeah. So that was nice that it was already a relatively accepted fan theory, you know.
I was going to say, I remember when we were pitching to Dragonsteel back in January of 2024 for this event, you know, they very graciously, again, I don't know any other client that has done this. Like, it was just so kind and so welcoming of Dragonsteel to do. We pitched and then they took us around the offices. And one of the things that they showed us was this like painting of Chana. And I remember we were like looking at it and Brandon Finn looked at the rest of the Dragonsteel team. He was like, that's pretty much confirmed, isn't it? And they were like very politely, very well covertly were like, you know, like that's a good theory. Like, let's move on kind of thing. That was one of those where when we got the chapters, we were like, oh my God, I knew it. And I'm just so happy that Brandon Sanderson decided, you know, I really want to include this in the event because that is like an extra little nugget that you as a guest who paid extra, by the way, to be at this thing, get to have.
Right. And
you didn't even know, you know?
And it's not like it's an exclusive, because I think that would have been not as cool to do like an exclusive. You only find out if you went to the event. It's like you do find out in the books.
Of course.
Like,
which had technically released that day.
Right. So it is like the best of both worlds where like you get something special and also it's not so exclusive that it is alienating to the rest of the fandom.
Right.
Yeah.
I do have one more fun Easter egg that is a spoiler from When in Truth. Do you want me to say it now, or do we want to have more? We have more.
No.
Say it now.
Yeah, tell me all the When in Truth kind of base stuff.
I love it, man. This was a randomly difficult one to decide. So if you are looking at the main stage, you'll see there's like a wedding archway, and then there's a larger like portal, which is supposed to be the atrium window, right? And that's where the LED wall is so that you can see the mountains kind of going out. That's the atrium window. Above that, there is a semicircle that has all of the heralds with the Rosharan symbol in the center. The order that those heralds are in is not the like Jezreen associated with number 1 and so forth. It's not that. The order they are in is the order in which Szeth goes to each monastery.
What? That's a great Easter egg. Oh my gosh.
This is incredible. Okay.
That's so much
amazing.
Back and forth. So much back and forth with Dragonsteel was like, we really want it to be a spoiler, but like, what do we do? Like, how do we make
that
this
was one of those things because Brandon had asked, he was like, oh yeah, we want to do this arch with all the heralds. And they were like, well, do we want to do the actual like order or do we want to do Szeth's order?
That's
Brandon
what they said to us.
Hold on.
Yeah.
We're like, whoa.
And we didn't know about this. The forward chapters that we got was the wedding, you know? I mean, like that's all we needed. And we didn't want anymore. I know that there's like beta readers and all that stuff. First couple chapters, we didn't want that. We just only wanted the stuff that we knew. But for them to be like, oh yeah, Zeth's order, we were like, is he going to
Zeth's-
kill all
right.
the heralds?
So then,
Yeah.
of course,
Oh my gosh.
Oh
went into
my
the books
God.
being like, okay, Zeth's going to kill every single herald in that order.
Right.
It didn't work out that way, but it's the way that they had it done. I was just like, I loved it when I finally was like, okay, he's going to visit each monastery.
Yeah.
In that order. That's super
So you
cool.
two had a little bit extra anxiety going into Wind and
A
Truth.
tiny bit. Like, man, what's going to happen? I mean, Monika always says that her baseline was so low. She was like, I expect everyone to die. So whatever happens
even.
positively is good.
My baseline was like, what's worse than death? I was like being tortured for eternity. I was
Yeah.
like, Adolin and Shallan are split up and they're both being tortured and Kaladin's being tortured and
You just went down the dark rabbit hole.
Because I was like, it's not going to be that bad, and so then everything's going to be better. And
Yeah,
it was.
yeah,
It was better than I had made a baseline for. But we can talk about that more on a.
I was gonna say we could talk forever about
I know.
Wind and Truth, and maybe like I think we would love to have you both on again
Oh,
in the
yes, like a
future
lore
for like
episode.
just a speculation like Wind and Truth episode.
Okay, this concludes our Wind and Truth spoiler-filled section of the podcast, and we're going to return to no Wind and Truth spoilers. So thank you both for diving into that particular theory, and let's instead set up our ending. Like a Brandon Sanderson-esque. So it's like 65% of the way through the book, but we're on the avalanche, and we're just going to ride this down. I would love to know a couple of things just about Paladin Creative and kind of like where you are going, what is 2025 and beyond looking like for you. I know these are speculative questions, but we are a speculation-based podcast. And so tell me a little bit about, let's go to the number one question that I think is going to be on everybody's mind. You can answer or you cannot. Is there going to be a Worldhopper Ball at Nexus 2025?
Hold on. Let me get the official document that I have a handwritten thing that I'm supposed to say when I'm asked this question. I'm just kidding. I was just joking.
Perfect.
No, I will say that we can neither confirm nor deny what is going on in 2025 at this time, but we will know more in the coming months. I will say personally, however, considering how well 2024 went and the positive reception we received for that, we are feeling very optimistic. But that's really all I can give.
Understandable and great to hear.
Yes, I had to ask the question because it's out there.
Of course.
And I think that what I would personally love to know is, what did you two see as the most rewarding or most successful part of producing the ball? That can be professionally rewarding or personally rewarding.
Okay.
We might cry during this.
I know this is really hard. It's really hard to put it into words. It's, I think, one of the reasons I'm so obsessively, I don't think I told you guys this, I have listened to your podcast. I want to go 8 or 9 times at this point. Like, it is so hard. The way that you talked about it is so how I feel and so what this meant to me. A lot of my reaction to that question is like, I'm in my head, I want to start with, when I was a child. That's not the appropriate thing.
Yeah.
It's not the appropriate way to respond and start, but it really does feel that way. Brooke, you were talking about, this was kind of that solve, like a Band-Aid over that child wound that you get. And I very much suffered the same child wound. I lived in my dreams. I lived in my imagination.
Same.
I was always criticized for being a daydreamer and not paying attention. And like, I remember the day that my Harry Potter letter did not come when I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
And I got into this industry because I wanted people to be able to forget about their daily lives and exist in the places that we all know deep down don't exist, but we all believe in our hearts do. And I wanted to build something that would show the world like it could be and like it has the potential to be, full of love and full of joy and community and gifting and doing it together, being part of the same team, a place without conflict, and a place with mystery and wonder and awe. And to see that come to life in the way that it did at the Worldhopper Ball was perhaps the most fulfilling and rewarding experience that I have ever had professionally. It is very hard to put into words what it meant to me to manifest this thing, like to pull this thing that didn't exist into the real world through sheer will, determination, and heart and love. I know I'm rambling here, but
No,
God.
not at all. It's so beautiful to hear you speak about it. And I think is such an encapsulation of like this whole thing to hear someone else like share a similar experience to me, and like also speak to what I was saying in that Worldhopper Ball or like Nexus episode of the way that this community feeds itself beneficially, and like the way that we continue to give to each other, you know, because you like put this thing into the world that then made me feel a way, and like I felt kind of weird on that podcast like talking about my like childhood experience, but I felt compelled to put it out there, and then like now you are here to say like, no, I will mirror that back to you, and that like circle of goodness
extending the hands out.
Yes. Like just continues.
Something I said at the very end of the event was that I hope one day, this is going off of what you just said, Brooke, by the way. Thank you for sharing that. One day I hope for someone to come up to us 5 years, 6 years, 7 years from now, you know, a 24-year-old, maybe a 25-year-old, maybe they were 18 or something when they came to this event, and they say like, I'm in the event industry because I was at the Worldhopper Ball. Like, I didn't realize this was possible. I didn't understand that I could go with you and see a world of pure imagination. And to me, that would be like, that's my real hope for this, is that one day I see that someone else who is inspired by that and being able to give that gift back. Yeah. Like The Good Place.
Yes.
I think that it's already happening, not necessarily the 5 years down the road yet, but I do see the artwork and the actors who are, you know, seeing these interpretations of them, seeing the pictures that people took of them, and then they're commenting on it. And so like it has begun. Yeah. It's something that is part of the overall Dragonsteel Nexus. Monika, as you mentioned, this is a separate event. It was a separate paid event, and Dragonsteel Nexus is a paid event. So like there are far more people in the fandom that don't get to go to Nexus, and then even more who don't get to go to this Worldhopper Ball. But each of those groups kind of benefits from the larger group. The fandom as a whole has something about it. I don't know if it's just because of the stories and just because of what Brandon Sanderson has done, but there is something about it that is more positive than negative, more about building up than tearing down. And then that comes into form so much during Dragonsteel Nexus at like every part. Yeah. The food vendors to the panelists to the vendors who are selling their stuff. All of it is on display and is felt by everyone who is able to go. And then you created the Worldhopper Ball, which elevated everything again. But like the only reason the Worldhopper Ball exists is because it was taking place at this community event of Dragonsteel Nexus. And the only reason that exists is because of this fandom that is positive and is feeding itself and growing in a positive direction. It's wonderful to be a part of. It's certainly never something that we could have planned on when, as you said, we started reading Stormlight Archive more than a decade ago. And that's not something that you build into your mind of like, this is going to take over a large portion of my life and is going to be something I obsessively think about and talk about all the time, and is going to be part of my wedding vows. Like that is not the beginning point, but to see where we are now and to see this experience that you created, it is truly mind-blowing or mind-altering and expanding. And yes, you showed me what is possible. I've seen poor versions of immersive theater. I have not been a part of the theater like Brooke or like these actors, but like I know when it's good. I know when something magical happens because I feel it as an audience member. And you created something magical. I don't know if it's going to happen in 5 years, but I can tell you that you did everything you could possibly hope to do in order to create that eventual meetup in 5 years when someone says, you showed me what was possible, something I didn't know what was possible.
I mean, and I would just say even like outside of that, completely honestly, like my life is different. I am different because of that event. Like the way that I felt there has inspired the way that I want to move forward in my life and like the person that I want to be. And it is absolutely directly like because of that experience.
So thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you guys. Oh my God. I mean, I know we texted or emailed about this, but I just have to say that that episode that you guys released about where, you talked about Dragonsteel Nexus, and then you mentioned the Worldhopper Ball, and you sent it to us, and we started that episode and we were listening to it, and then and we were sitting in the bed that we are sitting in right now recording this podcast with you guys. We were listening to it, and as soon as we heard the first words, the Worldhopper Ball, I wish you could have seen the elation, the jumping, the bouncing in the bed, the high fives, everything. You worded it so perfectly, even better than I think that we could have imagined the impact that we wanted it to have. This connection to something, like we were saying at the beginning of this, that there was this extend of the hand, and not only was it met, it was pulled in too, of we're like, please come join this world. And it's like, yes, please take me with you. I'm coming in fully.
Yeah.
I mean, you're asking about, what's the most rewarding part of this ball? I mean, it really is. Yes, of course, it's like, it feels so rewarding to be the first people to bring Roshar to life, to bring Roshar to the real world. Of course, that's rewarding. Of course, that's amazing. That's why Brandon Finn, my husband, keeps saying that, because there's another Brandon.
I understand it, and they're going to appreciate it later. Thank you.
Because Brandon Finn, brought this into the world, and he wanted to bring this into the world. But the most rewarding part of all of this really is seeing
The fans.
all of the fans, including the Dragonsteel team.
Yes.
That's so rewarding to see the Dragonsteel team have fun. The fact that Brandon Sanderson came both nights. And he came on the second time that he came, he brought his family, and he was like,
that was unplanned.
That was unplanned. He made an announcement. It was like, I'm spending time with my family. We got to talk to some of the family backstage, and they were like, this is what?
And you know how busy Brandon Sanderson is.
Yeah.
For him to come a second time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's high praise. And to hear the clients say, Monika, as you're saying, to hear Sean Boyles go, it's just like I imagined it.
Aww.
These are the people that are more attached to this story than anything. It is moving. And sorry, I know you have more to say.
So just watch all of them also just dance with reckless abandon to DJ Stormblessed, to the emo music, and just you see it in the pictures that, the official photography that Julia took. It's just those reactions, the fact that we all got to be children, regardless if we're 45 or we're 18 or we're 65, whatever it is. The fact that everybody got to be a child in that sense of and maybe that was the message there too, was the fact that that living in these fantasy worlds doesn't mean that you have to be a child.
Yeah.
That you get permission to do that again. That part of you still lives in you. There's that child in you that really desperately wants to come out again. It's never left. It's never left. And now you have permission to be here now. I mean, again, one of my favorite moments, I was waiting by Shadesmar. I was waiting behind Wit, because I was watching him, deliver his funny lines to people, which was just so great. People had so many great reactions to the things he was saying. But I remember watching somebody leave the Shadesmar tunnel. This person stopped, looked around, and not even just looked around. He looked up and moved his really took his time and looked at everything, took that moment to really be present. I could tell he was really there. He was I'm here for the first time. And then he put his hand over his heart, and I just had to turn away. I was I can't, this is why this is the most rewarding part of this.
Yeah.
This really is, because that's why you get
into
into events. This is why you get into event production. It's not because you want everything to look pretty or whatever. That's not the most rewarding part of event production. The most rewarding part about event production is getting to see the impact that it has on other people, and the way that you, Brooke and Tyler, talked about this on your podcast was just so perfect. Again, and even better than we could have imagined it being. That's just the best feedback we could have gotten. And that is really the most rewarding. This is why we do what we do.
I keep thinking of the vows that were said in the tunnel. We had the vows playing, and one of them, they say to each other, and they both say the same thing. And it just keeps playing in my head about the way that I feel and the way I hope everyone feels from that event is Shallan says something never alone.
We will not be alone. Never again alone.
And our journeys are now one. My oath to you.
Something about that just keeps playing in my head. I'm never alone.
Yeah, I think
This
the people who
community.
were there are connected in that way, that
Yeah.
capital C connection. And when you have that capital C connection, it is forever. Or I would like to believe that it is forever.
I do think it is. And we're all looking up together.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that it is not just coming from us. If you liked the Worldhopper Ball, if you felt the way that Brooke and I have expressed, the way that Brandon and Monika have expressed, like, share those thoughts, go out there and tell, even if it's just someone in your own life, you're just mom and dad, your spouse, or whoever wasn't there. And if it meant something to you, just express that. It doesn't need to be on socials to like get likes or any of that.
Yeah.
Just go out and say, this was meaningful to me and here's why. And it doesn't really have to be any more complex than that.
Yeah.
I would love to kind of get your perspective on not necessarily confirmed things that are coming for Paladin Creative, but what's your wish list? If Brandon says, hey, Worldhopper Ball was amazing, I'm hiring Paladin Creative full-time to make events for me and the fans, just like millions and millions of dollars come your way, and you're just not really restricted in the time sense or the budget sense, like you have everything that you possibly want, what's on your wish list?
A wish list of things to do for future Cosmere events. There's a few. I
And
feel like
by the way, these are not confirmations of
these
things
are
that
not
happen.
not at all.
Really not.
Yes.
These are wish
can't stress
things.
this enough.
Yeah.
I am
Um,
trying to be as clear as possible. This is a wish list
Yeah.
in a hypothetical world.
It is in no way an actual thing that will happen.
I'll take Brandon Sanderson out of it. Tyler Shotwell wins the lottery and is just going to pay you to do events based in the Cosmere. What do you come to me, not Dragonsteel, come to me with a wish list of?
So I always want this, especially after how the event went. I always want to make sure this is an experiential novella. These are always going to be stories that were not told, that can be told. One of the big ones for me is during the gap that Brandon Sanderson has said multiple times, he will not be able to write the gap between Born Era 2 and Mistborn Era 3 Ghostbloods. There is supposed to be essentially the 20th century, where we've got World War I, the Interwarriors, and World War II. And we know there's going to be some sort of a war between the Malwish Consortium and the Elendelians. I would love to do a paintball or laser tag battle with fully fabricated sets that takes place between Era 2 and 3. And there are paid actors with a goal, with a destination that like the consortium is going to win. And there's a reveal where like you turn a corner, like one of the actors is leading a bunch of people and they're like, okay, we're sneaking up on them. And then another actor who is, paid actor to be there at the time comes out and it's like Kelsier, and Kelsier is like, you're not supposed to be here, whatever, some sort of a reveal. I really want that because it's just it's like heart pounding, and it's and it's the only way I think you could experience that scenario, that war scenario, combat in that story. So that's one.
Okay, that sounds so epic, but also in immediate contrast to the Worldhopper Ball healing my inner child, this would traumatize my inner child. Like, I have visceral memories of my one friend who loved laser tag and had her birthday party at a laser tag facility every year, and I would dread it.
Qzar?
Because, Qzar. It was so stressful for me, and I was not good at it.
All right, perfect. I will just put on whatever clothes I don't care about, because I'm going to be running nonstop at this laser tag. I'm just going to be pouring sweat. Maybe like a 1970s basketball player. I'm going to have the sweatband on the top, but I'm also going to have wrist sweatbands.
Yes.
And I'm just going to be playing laser tag every single moment that you let me. Because again, remember, folks, this is all real, and it's happening for my birthday party next year because I won the lottery.
Those the 1980s prom I love that you guys just talked about on your last podcast, the 1980s.
Oh my
ball.
gosh, I would go to a 1980s prom.
Hell yeah.
I loved it. I want to. So I have there's two more. One is another one. These are all different formats because like the ball is the ball. Like none of these are gonna be ball. We've done a ball, and hopefully we'll get to do more balls. So I'm kind of playing around with like what other genres and types of events could we do?
Yeah,
that's one. Another would be like an immersive escape room, like an escape from Shadesmar journey, which could tell the story of, I don't know, how Vivenna became Azure.
Love
oh,
it.
Or
man.
how did Nightblood get to Roshar? Like, how did Zyhol get through Shadesmar? Maybe it's what happens to Shallan while she's in Shadesmar. Like, but the whole thing is like built like an escape room. Like, you're opening doors, you're trying to get out of Shadesmar and get back to the physical realm. And there's actors in there guiding you along and giving you hints. And the last and most important one, and the coolest to me, and this is a Brandon Finn headcanon, but I'm gonna try to bring it to life. Is that because we didn't talk much about the clock, the Worldhopper Ball clock.
Yeah.
Which was something that we came up with internally to represent the changing event, but keeping the brand consistent.
Okay, I've had this question because also the Worldhopper Ball clock is my lock screen on my phone right now.
Shut up.
Just telling you all of the lock screen secrets here.
I know.
My heart. Abby Lautenbach, have you heard this?
No.
Yeah. Shout out to Abby once again. Her and Brandon, I have to say, like, we have the notebook here actually of like, we can we need to share this with our audience, is that there is Brandon Finn.
It was the first clock.
Came up with the clock.
Wow.
The idea was like, I want to do an astronomical clock. And then Abby took that and ran with it and created this beautiful, beautiful branding.
These were the early sketches. This is what I do I'll be like, I have an idea. Here's a creative idea. I think I know how I want to make it run.
Yeah.
And then Abby, with her unbelievable design sense, will bring it to life. Like that's always how we kind of operate. And
so
it was like
planetary symbols.
Yes.
On it. So then I'm sitting here wondering, like, okay, can I decipher from this clock exactly what the next Worldhopper Ball is going to be? Because I'm going to know what planet it's...
Those are not in any particular order.
Of course.
Actually, originally we were going to have the clock built so that we could take out the symbols and replace them with other ones, as if because the wheel needs to change. And that's the whole thing, is we built it that way so that we could be like, no, it just rotated. Like, Cell's down here now. You just can't see it. It doesn't actually, there's no predicting. We didn't want to sneak anything in that way because we don't want anyone to know. But I love that you have it as your home screen.
That was also one of the fun things, like, leading up to the ball, as like, you were asking a question earlier about, what did it feel like a month before, 3 months before, whatever. I was on Reddit looking up stuff, and so I literally just typed into the search bar like Worldhopper Ball, and like seeing everybody's predictions, especially everybody's analysis and a speculation about the Worldhopper Ball branding. They're like, this is what the clock means, and I'm just sitting there reading all this
paragraphs of theories, and I'm like, and people didn't notice the archway had the heralds. What's going on here?
We were just laughing at not laughing
at.
I want to be clear, like, we're not laughing at these people. We're just like, especially leading up to it, we're just like, oh my God, nobody even knows. Like, we know this. That's one thing that I would say that I'm envious of the guests of the Worldhopper Ball, is that like, we've lived with this for over a year. Again, I remember when we came to the con, which at the time it was called Dragonsteel Con. It was Nexus was the first time it was called Nexus, was this past year, 2024. I remember when we came to the con and we had like, stayed in the hotel across the street. Literally, we're staying overnight. We brought backpacks.
We looked like hobbits because we only had the hotel for one night. So we were running around the convention with our backpacks.
And we had gotten like discount plane tickets where it was like they had to check to make sure that you didn't bring an actual carry-on, that you only brought a backpack, one of those. Like,
anyway,
just to say that like, it was just so, to go from those humble beginnings of like literally running around the convention where nobody knows anything, like nobody knows any of us, and we're so new to this, and it's really just like a drop in the bucket to go to now. I'm so envious of the guests who actually did get to experience the whole thing
like,
for the
no
first
clue
time.
what's going to happen here.
Because
walking
like,
up the stairs, no idea.
Like thinking about the year,
they did
like the over the year planning for this, which it really did start with that convention, was the first time, like, even though we weren't told to pitch until afterwards and we didn't pitch until January, it really started right then.
Yeah, of course.
And to go into what it is now, and to have people have experienced it and have them walk into this fully formed, is just, it's just so incredible to think about. I mean, I'm just envious of everybody who got to experience it for the first time. And like, shout out to everybody who came. Also, like, all their
thanks,
gorgeous,
guys.
all their gorgeous costumes.
Oh, you're all amazing.
There were so
Can't do any of
many beautiful cosplays. There were so many incredible cosplays where I was like, everybody really just went all out. It wasn't like people just came in and was like,
no, they made it feel real. Like
Exactly.
they wouldn't have been able to immerse yourself without it. Going back, so sorry I sidetracked us there with the clock. I would love to talk about it more though. I love that clock. I'm so proud of it. I love it so much. I have a vision that who's throwing these balls?
Ooh, who's the organizer of the balls?
Yeah.
Who did Navani and Adolin reach out to plan this thing? A la Lady Bridgerton. Is there a character perhaps that will become canonical that will appear in other books? Perhaps, maybe one day. So that's on my wish list. I don't,
I love
probably
that
too much.
Easter egg.
Okay, so it's
But,
not
like-
a Chris who's more like our Cosmere
She's
scholar.
a scholar. She's
But,
not
like-
an event planner.
But
Like
we have
Chris's cousin.
Tahani Al-Jamil, who is going
Yes.
to be planning all of these events.
100%. And like, that's
Hold on,
my deep down wish is that we can somehow, like, there will be a line in Stormlight 7 where Navani is like, yeah, the world, and we were at the Worldhopper Ball, and just to see that in the page, just to be like, oh my God, that's another one. That's fun. Anyway. And the clock is real, and they like go to it and mess around with it and stuff in the books.
Keep your Bondsmith powers active because you have quite an ability to pull things from your mind into reality. So I believe in you. And, like for Tinkerbell, I'll keep clapping to make sure you
Keep
have as
clapping.
much power as possible. Is there anything else? Because we're going to wrap up. We're going to, say our goodbyes. Is there anything else that you feel like we didn't ask you or that was really important to mention before we say our goodbyes?
did we shout everybody out?
We
that
want to
wanted
make sure to shout everyone out again to thank to give a gigantic thank you to Dragonsteel. Do we have anything more to say about the clock? I mean, I guess
Brandon
not.
has more to say about the clock.
I just
the clock's
used-
going to
I
come
worked-
back up because in my mind,
okay.
I'm going to manifest
It-
more
yeah.
Worldhopper balls. And
If
so
you guys promise me it comes back up and we can talk about it, yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, I do have to say, I saw someone on social media, like one of the Cosmere creators, 3D printed a version of your clock.
I saw that.
Because
I saw that.
I saw it in the back
That
of
was
his
so
video
tight.
and I was like, excuse me. Like,
Yeah.
pause, zoom in. What is this clock? Like, screenshotted it, Google reverse image search. Where do I buy this freaking clock? And then I
yeah.
saw someone else asked and he was like, oh, I 3D printed it. And I was like, dang it.
When Dragonsteel first announced that this Worldhopper Ball was happening, obviously we knew and we had signed the contract and everything, but like it wasn't publicly known yet, obviously, right? The first time it was announced publicly, Brandon and I were actually traveling. So we had literally just landed in the airport in Munich, which is where my life journey began. And we opened up social media and it was like, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like standing by baggage claim, crying over this. And I think like literally the next day we saw that 3D printed clock and it was just like, these
that's
fans, like, this is incredible.
I was so blown away and moved that someone took the time to, that you even have it on your home screen. Like that is a pure, I was sitting in my office with Abby and went, I think it's a clock. Like that's how it started. I think we should do a clock. I think an astronomical clock could work. Let's see what happens. Like to know that you just you pulled it out of existence and then now it's real. And people, like you said, back to the people being inspired by this and then they will be inspired to make something and that person. And like, it's so cool.
One of Brandon Finn's big goals for a lot of his events too is to have fan art created of the things that he makes. And there was so much fan art that came out after the Worldhopper Ball.
Oh, yeah.
So rewarding to see.
That was a life goal of mine. People don't make fan art of events. In my head, I was like, maybe one day my D&D campaign will be like a hit. And people will make fan art of my characters. It's something I've always hoped would happen. Is something that I personally create or make or work on is adapted to fan art.
Maybe that is like the theme of all of this. That's the lesson that we can all take out of this is that you move your timeline up.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to dream big from the get-go. Again, Brandon at the beginning of all of this was like, I would like to have a relationship with Dragonsteel and maybe a few years down the road, we'll get to do something with them. And bam, it happened, and
yeah, don't wait.
And so just like, yeah, that lesson of don't wait. Again, shout out to our actors who also took that chance and didn't wait and said, I want to do this. I mean,
what is the most important step a man can take?
Yeah, what is the most important step? It's always the next one. I mean, it was just this beautiful, again, you'd asked earlier about like what was so rewarding about all of this. It was just the synergy of all of this is just so funny to me because we took a screenshot when Brandon got the email and got rid of all of the contact information, sent it out to all of our friends, and was just so excited that, that we had gotten this email back from Dragonsteel. And we were telling this to some of our vendors that were helping us work on this Worldhopper Ball. And Wesley, the brother of Sunny, who made all of the the bridal outfits for Shallan and Adolin, he was like, that's so funny because when we got your email, we also took a screenshot of it and also sent it out to all of our friends. And like, and to also hear, for example, someone like Brandon Sanderson, who kept repeating when he was at rehearsals or he was chatting with us, he was like, my work has never been adapted. And we get to see it come to life here at this ball. What I love about all of this is that it was just such a win-win-win situation that it was all a gift that we were all giving back to each other. Mm-hmm. We were giving a gift to the fans and the fans were giving a gift back to the fan art creators, and and the vendors also got a gift, as well as the creator himself, Brandon Sanderson, got a lot out of it as well too. I mean, that, it's only winners up in here. At the Worldhopper Ball.
Yeah. In
Only
the club,
winners.
we all fam.
Only winners up in the Worldhopper Ball might be our best place to say goodbye. I have had an absolutely lovely time speaking with both of you. I could do it for another 3.5 hours. And yeah, we'll have episodes in the future when you come on and just talk lore stuff. We'll maybe try to do a reunion episode for everybody who was involved and wants to just get on like a giant Zoom. But this has been so much fun. It was incredible to learn behind the scenes stuff. But mainly, I just had gotten the vibe from both of you, the passion and the enthusiasm from both of you. And I wanted to make sure that other people were aware that as big an audience as possible kind of knew that this was a fan created event and it was done with such passion and care and attention to detail. And I think if you do a 3.5 hour podcast on an event about a fictional fantasy series, that means that you're passionate. Thank you both for your time. Thank you for all of the work on the Worldhopper Ball. Thank you for, being friends and being patrons. And I've just had such a lovely time. Brooke, do you want to say anything to Brandon and Monika before we take it away?
I think you hit most of it. Just thanks so much for your time and your efforts and your expertise, both of you, and what you have given to us personally, but also to the fandom at large.
You guys are great, by the way. Sorry, I wasn't sure. I just want to say thank you both. You're amazing human beings. I am so glad that we could share this really beautiful experience with you both, and I'm moved by your words, and I'm so grateful to you both, and we're so excited to just to see what comes next. We're excited about life, and that is a wonderful feeling to have.
How beautiful.
Thank you both.
Yeah, I really, really agree.
Also, I just want to thank everyone who worked on this with us, all of our cast, our crew, vendors, Sarah Seligson, Abby Lautenbach, Alex Locke, Lisa McAllister, Monica Finn, you guys, everyone, so wonderful. Thank you for bringing this crazy, beautiful thing to life. Marie Seeberger, thank you for doing all the concept art. The cast, and Jackson Dickert, Jackson Miller, Kathy Ford, Colson Joy, Savannah, Cliff Weitzman, Kaladin, Wex as Jasnah Kholin. My goodness, she was amazing. She's also the one that brought me up on stage, or had the idea to bring me up on stage the last night. She's the best. Sunny, Valentine, Bridal, Wesley, Kaylee Makes, Sarah Reidinger, Tasha Colton, our show team, stage managers. Love you guys so much. Thank you all so very much for turning this ridiculous, silly, incredible thing from imagination to reality.
And so when we, in the podcast, we say the first ideals. And so I would love you to join in with that. Brooke, can you take us away?
Until next time, life before death.
Strength before weakness.
Journey before destination.
Okay, I want to bring this back to our real world a little bit. We have spent so much time discussing the beautiful fictional world that you created, this event that actually combined the fictional and the real and merged the realms a little bit and allowed us this fantastic opportunity. As fantastic as that opportunity was, the real world has a way of reminding us about the difficulties and the challenges. And that's going on right now. That's going on in Los Angeles. There are fires all around the city currently as we're speaking in January of 2025. And I want you both to have the opportunity to say anything that you would like about what is going on, because it's directly impacting both of you who live very close to each of the mini fires that are going on across the area. It's putting a lot of personal stress on you, but of course, it's also putting a tremendous stress on the community that, as you talked about this entire episode, was instrumental. All of these people all around Los Angeles, these fabricators, these vendors, and you personally, you're all connected in making this event happen in Utah at Dragonsteel Nexus. And so I want to give the floor to you. You can say whatever you would like to say. And we are going to provide some links in the show notes that people can view if you would like to donate. All of those things are going to be available, and you can just check them out in the show notes. But tell me what's going on with you in the real world, Monika and Brandon.
Thank you for that lovely intro, because it has been very hard, and it's been so nice to chat with you guys to kind of remind ourselves of the beauty in this world, and this reminder again in real life of community coming together. The Cosmere fans are such a wonderful community that bring joy to each other and art and wonderful things. And we're seeing this in our community too in real life of, unfortunately, all of these people, our neighbors, friends, and families coming together to support, each other during this very devastating time. And I mean, just for context, Los Angeles is home to about 4 million people. And I don't think that there's a single person in this city who doesn't know at least one person that lost everything in these fires. And I mean, with the ash raining from the sky and the sun being orange every day, it's very, very tough, but you have to remind yourself of how lucky you are. And given how lucky you are, you have a responsibility to help those that are not as fortunate as you are. And in that vein, again, I see so many Angelinos rising up and helping each other. I mean, there's some shelters that are turning donations away because they're saying that they have too much. And it's very, very hard to see the city that you grew up in and that you love and live in, and all these businesses that you frequent and homes that you visited just be obliterated so quickly. But again, I personally just keep wanting to look towards community and the light that brings of people coming together during this enormous tragedy, really.
As we record this, we can literally see ash rain down from the sky, and it feels like ruin is here in Los Angeles with us. I usually, in times like this, I will go to the Cosmere and to Brandon Sanderson's books and try to pick out lines and characters and actions that, help me reassociate with the world around me. Just thinking about the most important step you can take being the next one. If Dalinar could do it amongst his flames in the rift, we can do it here. And we see that with everyone. And the Windrunners who are in the sky above us, dropping down, I don't even know how many, like millions of gallons of water at this point. There's nothing like lighting the beacons and hearing that Rohan will answer. And we see that. We see people coming in from all over the state, other states, countries, Canada and Mexico.
Portland, you guys, where you guys are from.
Thank you guys.
Some of your firefighters came here too,
and it's just been, it's really taught us what is truly valuable and how desperately we all need each other, and we all need to respond to each other when someone needs help. When a hand is outstretched, stretch your hand forth. Stretch forth thy hand, it still says. I want to acknowledge again the incredibly brave firefighters in our city that we see on TV. Just like, I cannot believe they are entering the fires of Mordor in the very center of Mount Doom. Like, when you're seeing what they're encountering and what they're dealing with.
Many of whom are incarcerated too. So
yeah, it's been a tremendously difficult time, but knowing that we have things like the Worldhopper Ball, that we have things like the Cosmere, that people keep putting out amazing art, beauty always rises from ashes.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
The resiliency of the human spirit and the community, I think, is something that we see a lot in the Cosmere books. And it does give me some hope that so many people are fans of these books, because I know that means that they are committed to being a better person and being a member of the community, so that when these types of just horrific things happen, there are people who are reaching out and helping and supporting in the ways that they can, whether that's financially or literally fighting fires or calling a friend and offering a meal and being there. So we really, really appreciate you guys for sharing with us. We're really glad that you are safe at the moment, and just really appreciate you being here with us.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate you guys so much. And for all those listening, if you know anyone in LA, if you have close friends or anything like that, please reach out to them, because I can guarantee you they are going through a very hard time.
And about the links, I think that a lot of people, want to have the kind of like silver bullet magic kind of answer, like, this is the one place to donate to that will help everybody. But, much like the firefighters that keep having to douse again and again these hillsides, there is no one answer. So if you see something and you are able to, please donate. We have an LA GoFundMe master list that we're showing. The Los Angeles Fire Department has a foundation that you can donate to. The Pasadena Humane Society is an animal shelter, and there's also the Wildfire Recovery Fund put on by the California Community Foundation, which is about long-term recovery and rebuilding. Anybody who's from LA who's listening right now is probably like, well, why didn't you mention this and that and whatever? There are so many things. I wish I could list them all. I wish I could list all of these families that are affected. I wish I could help every single person. But something that I heard recently was like, help one person the way you wish you could help everybody. And I think that's what community really is about, is everybody doing their small part, not trying to save the world, but just trying to help a neighbor and a friend. And that's what makes the whole world a better place, is when we all do that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
We have so many of these moments from the Stormlight Archive or from the Cosmere more broadly, but Brandon, you mentioned how it can look like Mount Doom, and I would remind you and remind anyone listening that there is good in this world and it's worth fighting for, and the community around you is often filled with that good that is worth fighting for. And so you as a listener, if you have any ability to help, even if that's just, as you said, reaching out to a friend, making any type of connection, if you have the ability to support financially, if you're a firefighter, like whatever it is you're doing, just like take this opportunity to do those things. Take a look at the extensive links in the show notes. And what Brooke and I are going to do is take the total of our January patron fund, everything that comes from our Patreon in January, and we're going to donate that to help out. It is not going to fix the world. Unfortunately, you and I are not Radiants, no matter how much we want to be. But I think that that's all that it's about. It's just when you have that connection, when something thrums along that line of connection for you, it's important to listen and to not let that moment go or pass you by. Just recognize it. And you, Monika and Brandon, you played a beautiful song. You made this event. You touched so many people in the fandom, and I hope that the connections that were formed there are something that people really cherish and know are strong and will exist, and they're going to exist in the future. I know this is impactful to us in the present moment, but whenever you, the listener, happen to hear this, just take a moment to look around you. This could be in 2 months. It could be in 10 years. I don't know when you're going to be listening to this episode, but just take a moment to look around you, look for the helpers, reach out where you can. When you hear that connection and when you hear that song, just react to it and don't let it pass you by. And we'll say thank you to both Brandon and Monika for sharing what's going on with you right now. And I hope that everyone who is listening, if you're impacted, you're safe, and everyone else, you find those opportunities to strengthen your connection with others around you.